The planning director is going to read some groundwork.
Morning, everybody. It's nice to see a full house. Good morning. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law and section 101.021 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the city planning department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Recusals from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you use the raise hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raise hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking on the raise hand icon again and mute your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Any call-in users can unmute by using *6. And I'll just note we're excited because we have hybrid back, so we're very pumped about it. Anyone who's joining us online, as well as in person. All meeting activities being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter submitted through proper channels have been considered. We've also received emails from those who provided written comment on a particular matter. Proper channels for comments are listed below. Communication with members of this body must follow proper channels for consideration. Any comments received by the Wednesday 12 p.m. deadline are collected by city planning staff and disseminated to the commission members prior to any scheduled meeting. Proper channels for public comment are listed below, sending an email to the city planning address with a comment or letter, calling or leaving a message at our office number, and then sending a letter or dropping off comments at City Hall 601 Lakeside. A few notes about procedures and our meeting rules. So the chair, Chair Curry, will call each agenda item and each applicant will be invited to proceed with their presentation. Each presentation would be completed prior to questions and comments from the commission in order to facilitate a smooth presentation. Once the presentation has concluded, the chair will ask planning staff to summarize any design review committee recommendations and any public comments received. The deadline for public comments is noon as described in the slide prior. Any comments received by the deadline are disseminated through the Dropbox link. Staff will also identify any members of the public present and scheduled to speak. Public comment is allowed at the discretion of the chair, and any individual providing public comment is permitted 2 minutes to speak to the agenda item in which they have an interest. The chair will then request a recommendation from staff, if applicable. The commission will begin deliberations and project review. Any commission member except the chair may make a motion at any point after an agenda item has been called. Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Chair Director, I just wanted to also make a note, there are some new microphones in the back of the room. Just for the audience to be mindful that your conversations may be picked up.
Thank you. Now you tell us that.
Right. Can I just note for the record, we're still dealing with some IT issues regarding our city planning. So we're working really hard to unlock that. We do have some comments in payment, but we will note if there are any comments in payment as once we get that.
Thank you. Michael, call the roll.
Anthony,
Present.
Luker, present. Curry,
Present.
McCray Scott, McKnight, Sargent, present. Slight, present. Foreman.
We have a full commission. Very exciting. It's been a long time, so just because of conditions. We're very excited. Full commission. So first item is to approve the minutes from the June 21st meeting. We have them in advance. We have done a copy here if anyone needs them. So if there aren't any edits or changes or questions, I'll need a motion to approve the June 21st meeting.
Sure, I move to approve the 21st meeting minutes as presented. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Luker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Abstain.
McKnight,
Yes.
Sargent,
Yes.
Slight.
Yes.
Okay, first item is a lot split and consolidation. This is permanent parcel number 120-14066. This is at 1509 East 123rd Street. Is Paul Bean here?
Everybody's here for my last.
Actually, Watch was
Yes, I know.
very, have a lot of conflicts.
This is, a reestablishment of a lot line, that was previously, there. I believe the owner is, coming online as well, so you'll be direct questions for him. This parcel on Eastern 23rd, see from the presentation, was originally 2 lots. Prior to the current owner, the lot was, put together so that the lots were combined. And this new owner would like to reestablish that lot line back in between the 2 parcels. Because he does have struggle with the second lot.
Let's try and give a piece.
Just the way that East 123rd kind of connects in that neighborhood, there's a lot of weird angles in the back.
It's not a flag parcel. It's
No.
not a maroon parcel.
It is not,
Belongs to the parcel to the north.
it does. We go back to, yeah, here we go. So you can see just because of the way that the lots go, there's a lot of weird angles. Maybe it is maroon first, but it's not owned by this one.
Maroon.
And then the last slide right there is just a very schematic previous back for, at least we see this, possible.
A 3 unit.
It is yes, so this is all multifamily. Already, so, again, come back for this particular. So.
Commission members, any questions?
One comment about that a shared drive, one parking space behind each of them. It will be a shared drive when we get to that, and again, I think we could talk a little bit more about it. I think we wanted to make sure that this commission knew the reason for the lot split, and the lot split, because there's a, that's gonna be happening. That,
The owner of the lot we're splitting is going to drive. You're gonna have a HOA or a easement?
there will be easement that he's gonna maintain, ownership of both of the parcels. Obviously, really from a lending and insurance perspective, that it makes more sense for these lots to be split. Getting insurance for an existing house and lending on a property that has an existing house on it, it makes the development peaceful, it's more difficult, so that's why it's moving it. And a liability standpoint as well too, reestablishing that market line, helps them be able to move forward.
We cannot split a lot, but unless you're gonna prove that there's either an HOA or a easement. So this would be conditioned on the fact that you're gonna have to, before they can
It's a
split it.
big lot there.
Yeah, but before you can split it with the plan, we can approve it with the condition that you're gonna come back with the actual easement and the shared
Yes.
removal and everything before the director can sign off.
That would be submitted to staff, so submitted to.
You don't have to come back here, but.
Okay.
Right.
All right, Madam Chair, there's no further comments. I'd like to make a motion to approve said lot split, two conditions. First is the applicant ensures that there's appropriate easement placed to allow access and egress for all residents of both parcels. Secondly, they vet all requirements with the fire department and building departments relative to setbacks and access.
I think that they can come back to staff with that.
Sure, I'll amend my initial motion that add one more condition that they work out any final details.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, I see Shannon Leonard has her hand raised.
Shannon?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Shannon Leonard, zoning administrator. So this application first came through Building and Housing because of the existing home on the lot for a Building and Housing review. And so the lot that they are specifically asking for, the lot didn't currently have a drive on it. There is no parking currently on the lot. And they are requesting to divide the lot back to the original lot lines. And then the new construction will come back before Planning Commission, or at least planning, depending on how many units that they have here on these lots. So just to give you some context, that it did go through Building and Housing. It was originally cited for Board of Zoning Appeals. But because the existing unit is not expanding in any kind of way, assuming that Paul's team on the new lot, or the old lot being recreated, doesn't need any variances, and they wouldn't need to go back to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
We have a motion in the second, call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Blucher,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Yes.
McKnight,
Yes.
Sergeant,
Yes.
Slide.
Yes.
Motion carries. We will see you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item is actually conditional use, which is a zoning matter. So, we will treat this like a public hearing. We will also be taking public comment during, Bedrock proposal. So it will be the same, instructions as I'm reading now, for how we will take public comment later. First, we're going to hear a presentation from staff. We will then hear the sponsor testimony of this conditional use hearing. And then we'll take public comment. First, we'll take comment from those in favor, proponents of the zoning change. And then second, we'll take any comments from those opposed. Before you give your comments, if you're giving public comment, please state your name and address or your organization and sign in. And we will keep your comments to 2 minutes or less for these matters. So with that, next item is 7112 Huff Avenue. This is a conditional use for a group home. You're not Shannon, but I assume that's you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and also the applicant actually also has a presentation. I figured this would be good to go first, so we can kind of set the stage for the background for the project. Alright, either present or online. Oh, there you go, sorry. I was looking around over there.
You can come on up, or if you want to stand there, whatever is more comfortable. If you want to sit here or stand there, we've got slides. Just state your name, both your names.
Madam Chair, they haven't signed in, so let's make sure you sign in.
Oh, anyway, okay. Later, you can do it after.
You can do it after.
Morning.
Good morning.
Yes, bye-bye.
No relationship to, right?
No.
Thank you.
So yeah, right, so I just figured it'd be good for you to kind of go through your presentation that you provided to set a good background for the project.
Oh, one of those. Okay, thank you so much. This project started, was in the works. We've been working on this for about 2 years with the state, and we're doing a lot of stuff that they required, that was classes that we had to take and so forth. I have a relative, by the name of William Ballard. He's like 74 years old. And Andrew is Boulevard. And we're the only ones here that matters, that's around. And I just couldn't see putting in a nursing home. So for the last 5 years, I've been taking care of Mr. Ballard. Even though the state means him where he can't live independently of his own, like pay bills, et cetera, stuff like that, taking medication. I never looked at him in that capacity. So when I come from a traditional family where we just never put our relatives in nursing home. Did a 10-mile walk with dad, grandmother. So it's like the last. I come from a large family and they all gone. So now I'm like my 50s and so forth, and I just time to pass the torch. So I have another cousin that's in a nursing home. So what I did was the family home that's at 7112. I don't now it's been in our family for generations. And I reside in Strongsville, so I had to sell my home so I could come down here and manage this home when my cousin passed away 6 years ago because no one could take it. Well, I didn't want him to go to the state and so forth. And then Billy was kind of about it. So it makes it feasible for me to, it's easy for me to take care of him because I'm a realtor. So I work off appointments. But it's a life altering, I'll put it that way. But I don't have any pressure on it or anything because and Angela, my partner here, she's a licensed medical assistant. Does the medication stuff on that right there. And she has a passion for taking care of it. She's just one of those people that can't turn away a stray dog or eat the homeless, just a good-hearted person. So we just figured, well, it's just the home is big enough. It's a nice, beautiful home. So we can get some kind of, how should I say, normalcy back in our own personal life. Because I have to schedule it again. And like, can't take trips and stuff like that unless I have someone. I looked into skilled nursing facilities. So, but I didn't really want to go to that level. So, but working with the Adams Board, I went and looked at a number of homes, working with Mr. Hubble over at the Adams Board, kind of right also. And he coached me along the way. Went through the LACS program, license, certification, practice system. We both took classes and working with the people down in Columbus and Adams. And Mr. Hubble was like, well, Stephen, you're going to be very popular because you want to have a single room. I said, yeah, I don't want to crowd in the bedroom. It's not like a money opportunity thing here. I do wealth and real estate. I just want a home fulfilled and family. I want everybody to have their own bedroom. Because I figured if they have their own bedroom, they would appreciate it. They wouldn't be want to go places and so forth. They wouldn't want to fight or anything. I think because from my observation from the homes that I've looked into, they're 2, 3 to a bedroom, and the common denominator was the tensions that were there. I'm like, well, I was in a place. I needed to share rooms. I guess so. So the demographic that I'm looking for are the senior citizens. Because Billy, Mr. Ballard, this is it. And I want to create like a family type atmosphere. So we want to go above and beyond because you don't want to just like look at it as a nursing home. You want this to be like a family home. looking for a break. And we want people that's gonna be in here that's gonna appreciate it, gonna have a screening process. And, there'll be rules, courtesy, bylaw, meeting, so forth like that, So, and that's basically why I'm here. That's where my inspiration comes from, to do this. And if you pray, take care of the day-to-day operations and so forth. Lord, my thing is just logistics. If things go well, we look at it as the house, the transportation, and maybe we can open up another home. More people, because I see there's a big need for it. And a lot of them from when Mr. Hubble was telling me living in Holden, and I went somewhere, some of them didn't have running water, really bad. And like I say, he feels want to save the world. So he was like, well, you could get a lot of homes. I say, hold on with it. Not what we was looking, we just want to do this for building. But we're just taking one step at a time. We want to master this, get it down to a science. That's where I'm at. So we need a conditional permit, so we had to come before the board, in our case, that's why that we want to do this.
Thank you. Can we grow up, you own the home, and you're not living in the home, or you're gonna live in the home?
Yeah, we own the home, we own several homes, but we live in a home right now because
Will
we
you stay in the home?
yes,
Okay.
we stay in the home because we can't live on it. Can't be trusted that way. So this will allow us to move out the home. And we're gonna have staff there, 24 hours a day. We got monitoring systems, video cameras, and we're gonna have someone there 24 hours a day. Cooks and so forth like that.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very helpful. Amazing story. Have a seat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is, sorry, Mr. Drake, right? Mr. Rose, sorry. This is Mr. Rose stated. So this is a residential facility located in a multifamily zoning district. So that's the main reason that for you today is a multifamily districts require conditional use from the planning commission if a residential facility is proposed. And so they are outside of the 1,000-foot buffer that the legislation calls for these residential facilities. You can see the closest one is a couple of blocks away to the north. So this site is just south of the old MLK school site, a few blocks away from League Park. And so, yep, see here, this current zoning at the time of the application was submitted, it's multifamily residential. This is one of the pilot neighborhoods form-based code. So a few slides forward, I'm going to go into what the current zoning is. And so because this was submitted before the form-based code was effective, it was adjudicated under the multifamily zoning district section of the zoning code. And so the main criteria that you're looking at today for the conditional uses is one, if the facility is not located within 1,000 feet of another residential facility, which it's not. You're also looking at the architectural design, site layout of the home, location, nature of any screening fences, the adjoining land uses, making sure that this is in context with the residential character of the neighborhood, and also this criteria of the facility meeting applicable yard, parking, and sign regulations and such. Here's a couple of street views that you can see. So on the top of the screen, we have the eastern view along Hub Avenue. You can see that there's some vacancy or some vacant parcels to the east of the site. And then commercial building on the next block there. And then on the western view, which is on the left here, you can see there's a vacant parcel directly adjacent to the site, and then a corner store. And across the street, as I mentioned, is the old MLK site to the north. So here's just some of the floor plans they provided. As they mentioned, they provided bedrooms for each applicant. And then so Since this, this is, I presented this slide just so you can see the difference, so. Pre-form-based code on the left, form-based code established on the right, it used to be a multifamily, D2, residential district, and now it's an urban node 3 district. And so if this application was submitted, today, after the effective date of the form-based code, these group living facilities are permissible, they're by right, actually, form-based code. So on the top there, on the right, I have just like a permissibility table. See UN, you would like kind of, use the matrix to coordinate to the group living, which is permissible. And then on the bottom there, I actually have those definitions that are listed, form-based code, which this facility calls them as the boarding, not boarding rooming houses, assisted living, nursing homes, and hospice, things of that nature. So if this was actually submitted today, it wouldn't even, it would help them go through the process easier perhaps. Standards that you're looking at for conditional uses, as I mentioned previous slide, to cap it off, the summary. You're looking at if this facility is located within 1,000 feet of a residential, within 1,000 feet of existing residential facility, which is not. And then you're also looking at the architectural design, site layout of the home, things of that nature, sure it's in context with the neighborhood. And that they meet the parking and yard requirements.
So first, anyone here to speak in favor of this or online, just raise your hand if you want to speak to this matter or ask a question. Anybody here who'd like to speak who might be opposed to this conditional use? That's good. So we'll close the public portion of the meeting. Commission members, any questions or comments?
I'm gonna comment on the questions. First of all, I'd like to commend you guys. Doing something that's sorely required in our communities, so we don't warehouse our seniors and public buildings or assisted facilities, most of which in the Black and brown communities can't afford. I think this is a great alternative. Take my hat off. Question I have is around church that's to the south. Is that still a functioning church? Here. So just an observation, there may be some synergy between you and this church. Activities and things that might deal with the seniors out. That environment, so it might look out. That is not.
Question for David. And this is not particular to you, I'm just curious. In this interim period where they had applied before, some people are saying they'd stay with the old because they had applied and it's easier, right? But in this case, what prevents them from having to pull the application and reapplying under the form-based code?
That could have been an option, because the application was actually submitted prior to the effective date. They were,
No, no, I'm just saying, can you do that? And the reason I'm
Oh, you're
asking,
saying-
I'm not saying they should, I'm just curious, like.
I think the other side of that is if, I'm not saying we should, but if we were to deny and they reapplied, they would get it by right.
generally.
My question of like, as people, we're gonna have many more of these, but and my question is just like, some people are choosing, because they intentionally applied before to stay grandfathered. But there was nothing that prevented them from having pulled this application and just applied and gone through under the form. Is there, there's no prohibition for doing.
Correct. Madam Chair, it's my understanding they've actually submitted their application quite some time ago. So we're just really trying to get them.
It doesn't matter for you. Shannon, go ahead. She's gonna correct us all. Watch.
Yeah, this is new, I think, for everybody, and I know you guys haven't typically seen the state licensed residential facilities. So the state residential license facilities are still regulated under our current code, even under form-based code, because it was one of those topics that just really wasn't able to be addressed. The point of the slide, I believe that Xavier was trying to make, is that the group living is available in the urban flex district. So the state licensed residential facility would still go through the same permitting requirements. Just to clarify.
Okay.
All right. I would like to make a motion that the conditional use, saying 12 part-time be approved.
We have a motion and a second. Any comment? I just really want to commend you, like Commissioner Booker. I mean, close to my heart and culturally also, growing up with immigrants. Built a house that my mom lived in for 10 years. So I think the more about this and maybe even highlighting this and the model and getting people to know that more people can help people age in place and do it it's amazing. So here to be founded.
Anthony,
Yes.
Booker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
Craig Scott,
Yes.
McKnight,
Yes.
Sergeant,
Yes.
Slight.
Yes.
Motion carries. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Exciting. Where would you go? Check out. Nearby.
Take care.
Thank you. For the next. The next item is a design review. I need to swear in, is Gianna here? And anyone else speak to this matter?
Yes, I'm online.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and shall answer to the penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Okay, this is design review 2024-024. This is Dunkin' Donuts, Cleveland State University signage seeking final approval at 1750 Euclid Avenue.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jan Ignazio. I'm with Phillips Kinnick Architects. We are here seeking variance for canopies and a window graphic. Those previous slides just show where our site is in the business district, as well as how close it is to Cleveland State. If you can go back to the photos of the existing, yep. So this is what is currently there. We are located on the first floor of the the Edge Apartments. You can see that the previous tenant had the fabric canopies as well as window graphics. And it is hard to see, but on the bottom photo, all the way to the left, they do have a window graphic fully covering one of the windows. We did speak to Cleveland State already. They did advise us that we cannot add anything to the metal paneling as well as the brick. You can go ahead to the next slide. So this is our floor plan. Our customers would enter the bottom left corner. That's the door going into the vestibule of the apartment. But you can see we just have some high seating along the walls, prototypical Dunkin' storage. And all the way in the back right, you'll see there is a utility room, and you can see that there is a window right there. You'll see in the next slide, this is the window that we are proposing to cover with a full graphic. Because it does cover the entire window, we would need a variance. But because it blocks the utilities from being seen by the pedestrians, we think that this would be very beneficial, as it would cover up the utilities and storage that might not be very appealing to the pedestrians on the sidewalk. And most of our customers are going to be accessing the Dunkin' from sidewalk transportation. So we think this would overall benefit customers coming in. And then for the canopies, you'll see that they are in the existing position of the previous tenant, being that we can't apply any signage to the brick or the paneling. This is our only option for any signage that's actually large enough to see from a street view and cars passing by. So we would actually utilize the existing structure and just switch out the fabric awnings, which this definitely helps with people knowing where we are on that corner. And this would be the main focal point for bringing business in. And then the front window graphics, those were below the coverage of 20-25%. But they just kind of add some graphic to the front of the building as well around the corner. That way people can see us from Euclid Avenue as well as 18. And this last slide was more for zoning. We had discussed maybe covering that window at first, but we actually don't need to, so you can disregard this last slide.
Comments before we ask questions, Bacon?
I'm just gonna, so Madam Chair, Dan Schenkel, Administrator for Downtown Flats, that looking came through and received approval from the committee. Just one simple suggestion to activate that last window with like a shadow box type window display. Otherwise, the committee has no issue with presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're going to consult the State of Bay Zone Planner and City Planning. So as you just heard, the proposal, 2 canopy signs and wall window signage. This currently is in a general retail zoning district. As I mentioned, right across the street from Michigan State University. There's the image of the structure itself. They're going to be at the bottom left corner there at Euclid and East 18th Street. And so, as you know, the code in section 350.16 gives this body jurisdiction to alter the sign code to be more or less strict. And the main things you're looking at are design compatibility, design guidelines, and technical variations from the zoning code. I just presented this slide to include the type of signage. It's business identification signage on the windows and canopy signs, basically any print attached to canopy. And so they're permitted 100 square feet max for their total wall and window signage for business identification signs. So they're going over the maximum about 58.6 square feet. So they're going to need a variance for 58.6 square feet. And they have 2 canopy signs dunking on them. 1 canopy sign is permitted per unit, and so they need a variance for the second canopy sign. And that's about it. Pretty straightforward. It looks like a little bit of my text is cut out there by the photo, but you're mainly looking at does this result in signage that is better suited to the design of the nearby properties in downtown Cleveland? Does this result in signage that follows the City Planning Commission's standard approval design guidelines? And these variances minimum necessary? Thank you.
Question?
This is just a clerical thing. Maybe I'm being anal, but it says Dunkin' Donuts, actually it's known as Dunkin'. So I just want to be clear there. Okay. I'm not an attorney, but you know, if I can find some holes, that would be it. No pun intended. So, I don't know if you got that.
You plan that. So sad.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance for site request by the with the additional square footage allotted for wall and window signs and also the additional variance for the
Excuse me, Madam Chair, can you just also just state the amounts of square footage for the variance in the motion that's needed, the 58.6 square feet?
The additional 58.6 square foot variance for the window and wall signs and the additional canvas.
And a second, motion second, I can't think because I rather like this sign. So, now that for the record, let's call the motion.
Anthony,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry.
Yes.
Ray Scott,
Yes.
McKnight,
She recused herself.
Yes.
Sly.
Yes.
Motion carried. Okay, now we have a special presentation. That's why we're all here. So I may just outline how we're going to handle this and then turn it over to the director. So first, just to be safe, I'm going to do a complete and total swearing in of everybody at once. The director will open and do an introduction and frame the whole session. The Bedrock team will present. I will then open it up for public comment, both online or in person. And when we get there, I'll kind of bring this around just in terms of how we'll do the public comment. After that point, then we'll close the public portion. Commission members will have discussion and comment and question. The only thing I want to ask is, do you want us to hold our clarifying questions till the very end? I read the presentation of Bedrock, or we can ask, we won't have discussion, but if we can ask clarifying questions through the presentation, and then we'll have discussion though once we close the public portion, because we'll have certain public comment.
So because this is an informational presentation and there's so much content to be digested, staff were comfortable with it being conversational. If there needs to be a pause for question, or comments, or clarification, or even feedback. Yeah. So, we want to keep it looser and less formal, and we're satisfied.
The only reason I'd rather keep it, what's the word I'd say, I'd rather keep it to informational questions, even some suggestions, is just so we hear the public comment if there is any, and then we have a discussion. So with that, we are here to hear the Cuyahoga Riverfront Master Plan Development. And so anyone who's going to speak here or online, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and you shall answer the penalty of perjury.
Yes.
Yes.
Someone online. Okay, so Director Wong, thank you.
So we're really excited. This is a huge effort that is an undertaking that will span decades, as we know. This is such a critical site in downtown Cleveland and really for our region. So we are excited to present the project to present the next stages of the Cuyahoga Riverfront Master Plan. Just a few notes before we proceed. There is a staff report. The staff report is in front of you. A lot of my comments will be captured in the staff report written by Dan and other members of the city staff. Bedrock team also has a staff report as well, so they're familiar with the content. So my job right now is to introduce the purpose and intent of the MDP, the city's structure, and maybe want to make some introductions for the folks in the room who are joining us today, and then we'll turn it back over to you, Chair. So to introduce the Master Development Plan, MDP for short, this document will work in concert with a series of other documents that will really provide the structure for the Cuyahoga Riverfront Master Plan. So the Master Development Agreement was signed in November 2023. And this agreement sets forth the overall structure for our working relationship between the city of Cleveland and Bedrock. The MDA does make reference to this document, MDP, as well as two other documents, the Community Benefits Agreement as well as the Financing Agreement. So jumping ahead, these two other items, Community Benefits Agreement and Financing Agreement, they will come before this body through legislation. It was introduced 2 days ago, I believe, at City Council. And these are, contractual documents that will lay out the community benefits that will parallel this effort, such as construction participation goals, FBE, as well as inclusion of affordable housing, public art, and other elements. The financing agreement will also determine the public financing for the project and any requirements for obtaining public financing. So why the MVP? Now, this is a guiding document that will really discuss, what will be delivered. So the idea is because this is a strong public-private partnership, the city is very interested in understanding with greater detail, with shared objectives, the delivery of what's before us. We want to set those guidelines now so that as we proceed through years of development, we can always look back to this document to say, look, this is what we agreed upon. That's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and as we proceed through the phases. So this document has several key sections, including construction phasing, has discussions about public realm and potential guidelines, as well as the overarching executive summary of the goals of the plan itself. I do want to capture for you a brief timeline, just so you're aware of the work that's been done. Last May, this body, the Planning Commission, did approve the conceptual framework for the master plan, that gave the vision and the concept. Throughout the fall, there were other agreements signed. In April 2024, the Cass Clinic Peak Performance Center was before you for schematic approval. And then throughout April and May, the city has been working very closely with the project team through a series of workshops. Thank you, Laura, and others for setting this up, including all the staff page turns for the Cass Clinic project. May 7th, phasing and sequencing. May 14th, parks, open space, and vertical transitions. May 16th, mobility, access, maintenance of traffic. May 21st, architecture, and then I believe this past week was public realm for the sequence 1A. So before you now is the informational presentation. This is to allow the commission to digest all the information, give feedback, provide comments, ask questions. And this document will be taking in all those pieces of information for further discussion between the city and the Bedrock team, and then we'll come back before you later this fall for the final action. So today's purely for discussion only, so that we can have time to digest. I do want to make some intros quickly. So city staff team, you all know Dan Schinkel, consult planner for Downtown Flats, Linda Hendrickson, who is Major Projects and in NOCAP, alumna of city planning, for coming back for this project. We have Jess Trevisano from the mayor's office, Major Projects, and she is shepherding the shore toward shore work elements. Chief Epstein, Integrated Development, Kelly Mersman from mayor's office, Mobility. I also want to acknowledge the design review committee members who are with us today. So Jeff Bogart, who's the chair of Downtown Flats, Kristen Sarchik, and also Greg Siltis. And I'm sorry, Tommy Blonson. And so they are here because they are participating in the information only for digestion. This document won't come formally will not come formally before the body, but this sort of by the questions and comments. So any questions and comments that you have will be fielded by the chair. Anything else? We haven't seen any stuff. Okay. With that, I want to turn it over to the Bedrock team for introductions and the vote.
Thank you.
So people can see you online.
Good morning. I assure you, after all this, it's still a very big deal to sit close by. So thank you for having us. Thank you for taking the time. And I'm just going to speak briefly. Dan has assured us that a long-winded preamble is not needed. And so I will jump straight into the presentation. We have a lot to go over today, so we appreciate the committee's time. A couple of things I wanted to note, and I appreciate the director acknowledging the staff. I'm sure the word collaboration comes up a lot at this podium. I want to assure everybody that those dates are precious to our team. I think about the themes and what we went through and the comment tracker that now exists for this document. And that there's a sense of great pride in the work that we have done together with our city team, who were named, and I won't name because I'll forget some of the names, terrible for hours. So thank you to that team in the city that we all work in. We know this is a very large project, but it's not the only project. And we have taken a lot of staff hours together with the city to get us to this point. And to the director's point, we were with Design Review yesterday, and I also want to acknowledge Jack Bileski, who I'm so glad is on our team, recused yesterday with Design Review, was here with us today. On another matter related to this, this is chapter, not a book, as everybody has said. So thank you to the city team. I am immensely proud, to say the least, to represent the team that's sitting in the second row and throughout this room. I kind of can't believe the practitioners that we have working and will continue to work and dedicating their hours on this. And please know the passion that's shared across the board for literally changing the postcard of Cleveland, 1 acre at a time. I would be remiss not to acknowledge my colleagues, our team member, Mike Deb Janik, our entire Bedrock team. We make the distance between Detroit and Cleveland very short, and I appreciate those that are online also listening. Oh, I have to mention Colin Mavis is online. She has led us through so many of these meetings, and we've literally made her sick. So she is online at home, but she will participate today. So this is a plan that is now in action, and I thank Linda Henderson for reminding me yesterday to remind everybody that, you know, we go down to parcels 17, 18, and 19 right now, and the site has been graded and cleared, which is extremely exciting to mobilize on a master plan. And I want to take a moment on implementation. And to the Madam Chair, who's always warned us, you know, show me, don't tell me, and we are doing that on site. So please take an opportunity to come down to our site and see what we're doing. We've also completed almost 500 linear feet of bulkheading. And as a federal shipping channel is an extremely important economic development element in our city, to say the least. $1 billion shipping channel, that bulkheading is as critical as any building that we'll build. We are also a project without a ton of precedent. Linda had a study of the 1991 Gateway Master Development Plan. Yes, she did. She did. All sections. But in some ways, we are really setting a precedent with this project, and that's not to boast. It's just to say thank you for grace and patience as we've gone through this process together. And believe it or not, for those that know me, my guiding word with this project these days is found in the comments section, and that's this word joy. Like, people are excited about the project, and I appreciate that it's not always evident when we're standing in this kind of forum to know what it's taken to get here and where we'll be here, I think, in 2 weeks and then maybe 2 weeks after. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, but we don't take it for granted. So we just appreciate your time and your feedback today, and we're here to answer your questions. We're so glad it'll be a discussion as we all maybe look to our own touchstone of this project and see how we can deliver it. Thank you. Oh, and I will introduce Michael Mears to get us started.
Thanks, Nora. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I echo everything. I'm glad everybody's talked about the collaboration that's happening. The directors mentioned it, Nora's mentioned it. Thanks to Dan and the team. It's really been an effort back and forth with the city over a couple months. I think the first time Linda and I sat down and looked at the MVP was in March. So we've gone through a lot of different efforts to get us to this point. So we're really happy to be here. We're really excited to see this kind of transformational project in Stockton first. Okay, so real quick, just to give you an idea of the way the document's set up, the introduction is really just kind of the background. It's table setting, both in terms of existing conditions of the site and what kind of that conceptual master plan framework that was brought to this commission sort of looked like, what it said, and sort of built on those ideas a little bit to the staff. And then also kind of talking about a little bit more about what this document is, what it isn't, what its intents are, what the principles are behind that, and the master plan, and then also sort of, what the process we're looking for. From there, the two sort of, chapters. One, the guidelines for public infrastructure, which really talks about the places, spaces, and streets, and that sort of public realm that everybody's really excited about for the master development, and the Cuyahoga Riverfront, and then the architectural guidelines. And as Nora mentioned, this outline in this sort of chapter, we worked with the city and sort of, previous documents to sort of figure out how to sort of piece these parts together to really deliver something that I think provides the right level of detail and the right, sort of idea of intent behind the master plan and really what we're trying to achieve. So for each one of those, real quick, sorry, I'll go through each chapter and then pause. So if you want to, you can interrupt me at any time, but if you want to wait till the end of the chapter, that's totally fine too. Cullen was going to be here with me today, obviously, but now you're stuck with me talking the whole time, so feel free to interrupt as needed. Let's give these seconds. So real quick, obviously, really the goal of this, as it was, delivered last year, is really to build on the site's location, history, and the synergies of related projects that are happening. Both of those synergies go from past efforts, whether it's Vision for the Valley, but then also new and upcoming efforts, whether it's the short core vision, completing the streets ordinance, TDM legislation, or sort of the ongoing efforts to sort of extend the CBSR railroad to that point. So really, what we're trying to do is, build on that sort of history and momentum that's happening in this. And, as everybody here knows, the site is really uniquely positioned to sort of leverage its adjacency to both the river, downtown Cleveland, the Gateway District, and Tower City, to really kind of develop one of, the city's sort of largest transit-oriented neighborhoods in sort of northeast Ohio. And really, one of the things we want to kind of talk about and sort of highlight is like the framework where we were trying to do sort of, we want to make sure that it sort of thinks about extending beyond the project. Obviously, we're looking at the site and what, Bedrock is looking to achieve through the vision, but really what we're trying to do is establish some of the baseline standard of high quality design and character to ensure that sort of riverfront district expands to sort of the larger flats in the riverfront area. We're really looking and thinking about how our project meets different edges, whether it's connectivity. We also want to think about how that sort of expands in all sense. So I won't spend a lot of time on these, but obviously we did a lot of different background in terms of existing additions, from ownership to sort of elevation and topography changes, really looking at how the site sort of looks today and thinking of creative ways to address those issues. Obviously, we have a big elevation change, which was here on the road in Tower City down to the riverfront that everybody knows. We have this dual roadway system of upper level roadways here around Prospect in Ontario, and this sort of lower level set of roadways between Canal and that's 38 Stones. So really, when we talk about the vision, again, this is sort of backtracking to the initial conceptual master plan as sort of something defined. Really, the goal here is to develop Cleveland as a 15-minute neighborhood that positions it as an 18-hour city. Really, we want to leverage sustainable investments and sustainable infrastructure and open space to really be a driver for the sort of public and private investment. And then also we want to ensure the delivery of those open spaces and the opportunities to get whether it's economic opportunities, access to them. So a couple things here, just highlighting the master plan, so as current update. Obviously this conceptual neighborhood will feature a mix of programming, sort of land use programming in terms of buildings, but also mix of programming parks, open space, pathways, bike lanes. And the key here is sort of embracing the power of the riverfront and having that riverfront sort of be a part of the master plan. Sort of, the conceptual river walk that you kind of see there in yellow, and that big riverfront parkway is kind of like the key linchpin of this sort of master plan in terms of the parks and open space. And really meant to sort of lead, the texture of places and buildings and the neighborhoods. When it comes to infrastructure, obviously, one of the key and distinct features of this plan is really trying to make 3 points of connection north from new roadway, what we're calling it up to Huron Road. Whether it's through Tower City, is one key connection, that kind of primary quarter shore route that everybody's been discussing, but also additional north and south connections to really sort of leverage the site's connection to downtown Cleveland Public Square and Tower City. And really those connections to try to unify the neighborhood, north and south, but then also thinking about new connections on Beagle Avenue and reestablishing that connection from this area to the Gateway District in the Warren. So really sort of meeting that fabric and that road. So just touching a little bit quickly on phasing, as mentioned, we sort of went through different workshops on different elements of this. Obviously, the master plan is going to be developed over a long time frame, 15, 20 years. We sort of, right now, it's kind of outlined and suggesting in sort of 3 different phases. And each phase of the plan is sort of broken down into what we call sequences, which are sort of more detailed, kind of more micro view level of what the projects and the infrastructure and the vertical development that's intended to happen in the phase. And that's really kind of, the micro view or the phases of the macro view. And that micro view is really sort of those sequences are what our day-to-day activities are. And that really composed the efforts of, our team, the Bedrock team, the other team, and really those are the results in the deliverables that come before you, at future meetings. So think of the CAS clinic, that's an example in sequence one of the work that's being done to sort of deliver, those things and what will happen in the future as those additional sequences come through. So just real quick here, I'll kind of walk through the sequences just so you get an idea. Sequence 1A, one that's probably everybody's most familiar with the CAS clinic, and sort of the new connection, Eagle Road on the left. On the right is sort of sequence 1B, which is sort of building out that neighborhood around Collision Bend, working our way sort of along Ontario and along Huron Road, and also sort of the development of the new roadway, as we're calling it, which is, I'll get to a little bit later, which is sort of the shifting and repurposing of the existing road. And then from there, we can move into the sort of subsequent phases, which is phase 2 and phase 3. Phase 2 again continues further along, new roadway in Huron, and then starts to look at some of those existing streets, the streetscapes north of Huron, whether it's West 6th, West 2nd, and also Prospect Avenue, and really sort of creating a continuing Main Street network and mobility network. And while the conceptual third phase looks at extending that Riverfront Parkway all the way to Carter Road, Riverfront Park, all the way to Carter Road, and really establishing that last sort of link in connection to not only Huron Basin Park, but the terminal. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I just didn't think it makes sense there. How did you determine the timing of the phases, I guess? I'm curious as to what went into that. You know, it seems to me like you're starting, like maybe I would have started the other way. So just
So one thing to that point, to share, starting the other way, only, there are some challenges just to address that, because I agree with you, it's start closer and then go further away. One is the Sherwin-Williams team is still very much occupying the Brady Research and Development Center that is there on the, cardinal directions on our project are very challenging, I admit, on the western portion nearer to Carter. So that was a relatively easy decision, and they will be there through the end of their current lease before they move. The other thing is the opportunity for an anchor project where we did begin at parcels 17, 18, and 19, which is then that kind of southwest portion near the Eagle Avenue Bridge, allowed for an opportunity for not only an anchor tenant, but the anchor tenant that we are looking at in terms of the CAS clinic. This is also not to get into just fathoms of infrastructure and sequencing from a construction perspective that in some ways has to be concurrent and other ways has to be linear. And with the original vision laid out in the master plan framework, it was this notion of starting where we started going around the bend, including the bulkheading and making that part of capturing all of that infrastructure benefit as well.
So really, as now we kind of we're transitioning from both the vision and both the sort of framework. Now, really, as the director sort of mentioned, sort of focusing that not only as being sort of this part of this larger set of documents and sort of guiding the development plan, but really the MVP is kind of the next step from that master plan vision, so that the advancing bedrock vision for the entire home. And really, the role of this project is to kind of provide that flexible framework and really sort of outline sort of design intent for those subsequent sequences and phases that will come. Really, it's really to ensure that the plan's vision is reflected throughout the built environment, whether it's public spaces or architecture or street space. And really, we wanted to sort of to view the stakeholders, the community stakeholders, to really let them know that sort of the parks, the streets, the buildings are going to kind of be sort of planned, designed, and executed in sort of a comprehensive and a cohesive manner. And there's some predictability in what's going to be delivered, from the first phase all the way through the next. So there's going to be some consistency and understanding of what's the potential goals are, and what the objectives are. In terms of process, obviously the MVP has its own sort of, situated in terms of, the different sort of agreements, in the process of the development. But really, we wanted to highlight this here because we'll be back multiple times. That MVP isn't kind of the end of the race, it's sort of somewhat of the beginning. This is really kind of, again, just the next step, and as sequences and projects, get further developed, they'll come before you for the typical conceptual, schematic, and final design review as that's happening, with sort of the cast plan project is. And really, one of the things we want to highlight too about MVP itself is, as the vision starts getting realized over time, we think this document is kind of living and breathing. And needs to be somewhat flexible and adaptable, as things, get developed and changed, amendments. Because really changing technology, changing goals and desires, market conditions, you name it, will be obviously factors that drive implement something like
And Madam Chair, this might just be more commentary, but team up to be more proactive. When we talk about this place, space, the environment we're creating, I think the biggest challenge outside of your purview there is how it's connected. And we've put how many millions of dollars in public square. Sherwin-Williams building. We talk incessantly about that experience along Superior and Ontario. We can't forget that these connections are just as important. I hope that the administration is starting to study this and not react after that, because then it's too late. So I just hope that when we talk about process and collaboration, you get one word, it's called coordination too. So I just wanted to point that out.
Mr. Fluker, to that point, and you'll see in later slides, we hear you and we see you, and we have charged ourselves with that. The city has also charged us with making sure that we are not just 38 acres operating in a vacuum. And so in further slides, you'll see our connection to things like the Memorial Bike Path, the extension of the towpath trail, both east, south, and west. Canal Basin Park, we've met with that team, the county, the Metro Park. So we continue to ensure that our project is not just moving towards completion, but connected. And I assure you, the city has not and will not let us forget that. And I thank Kelly and others for also keeping us current on the current investments. The city is the city's invested in things like the Midway, obviously Public Square, in terms of our original notion of Port to Shore that is now Shore to Port to Shore. So we hope that that's reflected in the document, but it's a good reminder to never be complacent about that charge.
Yeah, and I think to that point, one of the things we also want to highlight is, the recommendations and strategies and ID guidance for the year. I mean, really, we intend that should provide some flexibility. And the idea here is that, we don't want to be so prescriptive that we limit the future creativity and future, ideas that can come out. Really, we want future projects, whether it's in year 5 or year 15, to really sort of be aspirational. Sort of as the neighborhood gets built out, we're going to try to find different and unique ways to deliver on the vision that we're having. So 2 more quick ones here in this first sort of section. Obviously, the document and the goals and the vision of the master plan, contained within are really, they're organized around a series of best practices and principles around, urban design, that outline different ways and strategies and methods to deliver, high quality urban public spaces. I won't go through all of these, obviously, but just as a high level, we'd like to think through sort of these 4 key things when we talk about the principles of the master plan document. Really, we want to sort of embrace the river, celebrate the Cuyahoga riverfront and sort of lead, with the sort of public realm and landscapes. We want to prioritize pedestrians, multimodal transportation and transit connections, and thinking about our streets. We also want to create places of lasting value. We'll talk about architecture, materials, and durability. And last, we want to think about advancing sustainability. Through our design, obviously, the TOP district, and really focus on this TOP connections helps with that, but then also in terms of our, dealing with the completed streets, ordinance for the city and TDM strategies and those kind of things to really live sustainability throughout each project. And I'll just go
Madam Chair. The executive summaries, particularly in mobility, talked about quote unquote creating intermodal transportation network. When I read through this page, it felt like, it sounded more like just more bike racks and bus shelters. I'm wondering, maybe you could get into this kind of maybe thinking bigger in terms of like what that actually presents, especially with its proximity to public square, particularly like looking at the city right now when we have big events or, things like filming, how public square becomes almost non-usable because of the rerouting of the buses. It takes almost an hour to get from Public Square to where I live on the west side. I'm wondering if this starts to play a role in that kind of decongestion. What are the big moves working with RTA specifically?
I think the chair, the challenge of the MDP is that it functions as a summary document, and it's a dense summary, I understand, that represents several other processes that include but aren't limited to our mobility study. So within that mobility study, you will see the texture of going much beyond, obviously the facilities, not just on the streets, but on the sidewalks, for mobility measures, but looking at the streets network, the intersections network, and ensuring that, for example, if we make a major move, we're not going to, kill the level of service at other intersections. So one of the things that we really struggled with, and then we did it, collectively, is how to have enough but not too much in this document to allow the MDP to represent and the mobility study to tell that story. So we work extensively with RTA. Certainly they're a huge tenant of ours and we work with them as a partner, but also through our transit impact assessment, all of our mobility study work, any of our traffic counts are done always together with the city, ODOT, and RTA.
So a deeper kind of dive into that.
No, it exists already. So it's it's not been formally adopted by the planning commission, but it's a similar collaborative document that we do with a different group of city staff. We meet bi-weekly, and it is an existing document called the mobility study. It's currently in its second draft.
Yeah, and so we're also working, as we go through different sequences, we get to work into this, but second start. We're also working with city staff to refine the communications and where the benefits take place and happen to face the potential shift.
I would say, maybe even more direct request if it's not already in the document. Specific looking at how those kind of whatever existing channels go in the public square can be decongested, probably kind of bottom, make that less congested, but also live. So that those bus line 26 all or something.
I make a note about just administratively that once that document is finalized, it's still the draft, that it should probably accompany the document here and that the planning should see it. Is that a request that you'd like to make?
It's not in here.
And last, certainly not least, for this first section is really one of the things we talk about sustainability and sustainable planning and design strategies are kind of are intertwined and woven throughout the project and throughout the vision process. Obviously, the public guidelines for infrastructure or the guidelines for public infrastructure, the guidelines for architectural development, really, we're talking about sustainability to the right different modes and methods and channels, whether it's just high density, transit oriented, mixed use development right around Tower City, or it's an interior selection or some combination. And right now the project's actually looking to is actually pursuing, master plan itself is pursuing the city's destination. So there's obviously both from a high level looking at sort of sustainability for the whole entire district and project all the way down to sort of the detail on the specific projects.
So I had a question about this, Mark. So how attainable, I know LEED is a really hard thing to actually attain, but LEED in sight. So if we're not able to get it, what are some parameters that to take out of LEED that are still going to be hit by the project if you're not going to actually get the actual certification? But then also on the client side, does like their additional design fee to actually reflect the capacity of the consultant to like bring on but those people who, because it takes staff to actually go out.
So for the LEED perspective, that's sort of the high level like master plan. So that's what we're looking at now with everything. Emerald is a project manager on our staff to help us work through that project. We're right now working through the storage sheet and everything. So thinking about those efforts, what can be achieved from stormwater, what can be achieved from just location based transit, what can be achieved from public space. So from a high level, we're starting there. And then I think, and then as we get into specific sites, I know the CAS Clinics project itself is looking for, lead silver thinking. So I think it's kind of, we're attacking it from sort of both angles. High level, what can we do, what can we do to across the whole district, and then what can we do specifically as we get to a specific building and site. And I think stormwater management and material selection and durability and all those other elements. And then also I think just from a sustainability standpoint, working with Matt and the city staff and working on sort of TDM strategies and other elements so we can really sort of intertwine those efforts into sort of not only the high level master plan, but then also the systems.
I would just add to that, the city's sustainability staff has been extremely helpful in terms of matching priorities and shared matrix priorities. But it's a great question. I one that I actually wish was asked more often, which is, do you know what you don't know? And so the inclusion of the Emerald team has really helped us. And believe me, they are expert in this. And we've also been meeting, they have been meeting with the Federal Green Building Coalition to kind of check our work as we go through the matrix. So the first part of your question, which is don't get to the end and assume you're going to be fine because you're scoring particularly well. Because we all know, you have to get more signatures, end up with fewer. So as we go through the matrix and we have kind of red, yellow, green boxes that we're satisfying, checking in with green building at a higher level for the plan itself. And then I would just add that within the Bedrock family of companies, sustainability staff that sits within each individual company has more recently been joined by the CAS sustainability director, Daniel Doza, who's been really great to work with on the building itself.
Great. Before I go to the next session. So, so chapter 2 is really the guidelines for public infrastructure. This is really what we're talking about, sort of the places, spaces, and streets, that sort of bring people in and move them around, and really this starts off with what we call, we really want to fit this district in with the surrounding contexts and really sort of highlight and leverage this sort of Port of Shore initiative. And really the framework is what we call surrounded by big moves. And these are sort of like infrastructure moves. Really, we call them the enabling infrastructure. And really, these are sort of what we think are necessary to kind of unlock the site's potential to develop paths and sort of opportunities for different businesses. And really, these kind of include a couple things. And for most of these pages, I'm just going to kind of high level. I'm not going to get into all the specific objectives, but just giving sort of high level overview of what each chapter in each section sort of focuses on. So this one is around those big infrastructure moves. And really, that includes connecting Eagle Avenue ramp. So the new Eagle Avenue Bridge from the Gateway District down to West Third, sort of create that new access point. Bulkhead rehabilitation across the whole entire length of the riverfront. And then also this reestablishment of a new riverfront boulevard called New Roadway along the riverfront, which is really a sort of a shifting of Canal Road to the south. And then repurposing Canal Road as sort of a service drive to the city district. And really that helps unlock space in the north of Huron Road for development. But then also helps to sort of establish that sort of, riverfront parkway or riverfront park along
I just want to mention proactively, as we've heard from this commission before and several partners on this site in particular, you see the inclusion of a potential station for the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad. And I just thanks to Jess Trevisano, to Lynn Henderson, and to Matt Moss especially, and almost exclusively for continuing to keep that really alive in our discussion. But also our partnership with NOACA and AECOM, who's currently working on the feasibility study with the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad, and then of course the partners with the railroad and the park. So we have identified a potential station location. Actually, it was initiated by our CEO, Kofi Bonner, who said, why don't we provide an opportunity and some documents and exhibits for this discussion to add a little bit more weight to Bedrock's commitment, and so we did so, and we have handed that over to that feasibility team. But we know it is an interesting and a hot topic, and we will continue to work with that with the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad team throughout.
So those infrastructure moves, those big moves, and infrastructure. Really, then we file that, we file thinking about sort of the land use programs. And that really sort of sets up this opportunity to really emphasize transit connectivity, river access, and sort of a phased development approach that really kind of leverages the TOD link, and sort of the high density uses that would be placed north of New Roadway, directly adjacent to Tower City, really sort of establish that TOD district. And really sort of help, those infrastructure groups really help us, sort of allow that development density north of the New Roadway, Boulevard, adjacent to Tower City, adjacent to. And the key feature there, I'll say, is one of the things that also does, it sort of highlights this sort of public realm and public open space parcel that sort of runs the entire length of the project from the Cascade site all the way to Carter Road. And that's kind of what I'm going to touch on here, is the sort of the program around parcels with spaces. And really, the Riverfront Parkway, that sort of 9 acres of riverfront, it's really kind of the key sort of linchpin and pivotal sort of piece in sort of transforming this district. Obviously, that's kind of like the cornerstone, and it's a way to sort of weave the thread of different phases and different projects sort of by single thread. So we really kind of strategically give people access to the riverfront sort of at different phases, but then also, using Tower City and all those different things, providing access. In addition to that sort of 9 acres of riverfront, sort of an additional 3 or so acres of strategically located publicly accessible private open spaces that really help us try to create those links that I was talking about earlier, from Huron Road down to New Roadway, and we try to work to traverse that steep slope or that steep grade that we have to deal with between Huron and currently Canal Road. And really what we're trying to do here, and I'll kind of walk through a little bit in the next couple of slides, is we're really trying to sort of cater to sort of diverse uses and needs, and really trying to make a new experience across the riverfront, whether it's from the kayak launch to the Forest Hill, really trying to create a diverse palette of experiences, along the riverfront, give sort of a dynamic space.
One comment on the A spaces, and I know each of these particular spaces will be different depending on kind of development they sit, but if there's any high level kind of protections or coordination about how that road is going to be maintained for the public, we talk about this porosity going back and forth. But if there's any like mandate at that high level that will direct, the development of that spaces to make sure that that public access is actually maintained when it's built.
So real quickly, I'll just kind of walk through sort of that experience and activation of the preferred sort of public space, and then also you gotta understand how these spaces, come online. Right here, we're talking about sort of riverfront recreation, the kayak launch, which is sort of part of the Cascade site, and this is sort of the sequence we're in. And really the idea is sort of highlighting active riverfront access in that sort of first. And then sort of as we move around, the idea is building sort of flexible open space, what we call the bramble or the hillside wall, and sort of sequence 1B as we move around the corner of Collision Bend. And then sort of building on the sequence as well, sequence 1B. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I know this is high level, but I think this will probably be a comment throughout, even when we get to steps that are coming through those A spaces that challenge the design team to think larger about how we can navigate grade change as opposed to just theater. I feel like Lakewood is like doing the steps things over and over. We don't need any more Lakewood steps, like we just need cooler spaces to navigate grade change. Also even just thinking of precedent, we have Settlers Landing and also Jacobs Pavilion, so like amphitheaters already, or those kind of spaces already exist on the river, so can we create something new? Especially in like kind of these large spaces that navigate that grade.
Chair, I would say if there are a set of themes that we hear, and your mention of the grade change is top 3 easily. And the challenge is to, the design team for sure, and it's coming from several sources, including ourselves. One thing I would note, and it's a note that we got as recently as yesterday from Jess and Linda, it is hard to capture the significant grade change. We go from 100 to basically 7, but it's 0 at the river level. And how we are building an infrastructure to not continue to just do steps. And admittedly, it's going to be a combination of both efforts and innovation. especially as we move, and the MPP is really focused on those initial sequences, 1A and 1B, but that doesn't mean we haven't talked a lot about, closer to Huron and where the grade becomes so significant. So Dan tells us all the time to be creative about that, and we will continue to do that together. What you'll see, and it's in the staff report as well, this includes one of the biggest gestures of the original master plan framework was the Huron cut, which is now no longer. We are now looking at road diet on Huron, and we are looking at better ways to connect from Huron down to the riverfront, and also not to your previous question, kind of kill the traffic infrastructure level of service and public transit access.
You're okay with audience questions at the moment?
Sure.
Or we wanna wait? I'm sorry, to the chair.
We're not done yet, are we?
Just wanted to clarify audience questions, but
Sorry, you weren't in here. We are taking public comment when they're through their presentation, and we're gonna follow the way that we handle our zoning matters, so.
Great.
So there'll be a
Thanks.
public comment period. You don't have questions?
Does that remember?
We're holding those for the public comment period.
We're gonna do
Yes,
seven.
yeah, everything, just everybody. Go ahead. Keep it perfect. And I would say to the extent that you can, I think not that I don't wanna just talk about process anymore, but when we get down to the meat of the slides that have the less text on them that show the content, I think we're really there.
Yeah, so I'll continue through here, which is kind of the experience of the
Okay.
parts of open space. So this, as we move around, sequence 1B is the idea to get the Bramble and side null. And then again, sequence 1B, the idea of certain events, study the law. And then in future sequences, the idea that we have Belvedere, which is sort of like a shore connection, and sort of transition from Tower City to the Powder River and the Riverwalk. And then getting into sort of the slope lawn, which is sort of sort of all season space, both summer and winter, and active space. And then also the sort of buildings that deal with Forest Hill and Wood Garden, which really sort of trying to establish the Forest City and the urban tree canopy, but also establishing the riverfront edge on a more natural way. And then to the comment earlier, and then also the idea of those additional sort of spaces north of New Road, right, those connected spaces, the Cleveland steps, the Forest, the courtyard steps, and those other, public accessible spaces to try to create those limits, really sort of the intent here of what those spaces really may look like as we go along. So I'll kind of go through the last couple sections here. Transportation and mobility, obviously, developing in 15 minutes or transit oriented neighborhoods is the primary goal of the plan. But we want to make sure that we still provide access for all users. And we looked at sort of the roadway network as part of the mobility plan, as part of this effort to really make sure that we're sort of coordinating, connecting the new roads with the existing roadway network. We're really trying to maintain existing vehicular access while also proposing new vehicular access. So it's Eagle Record Avenue. And this also includes sort of improvements to the streets or this road guidance, sort of improvements, building multimodal uses throughout the different streets and throughout the different. And then building on sort of the street network is the idea of sort of pedestrian access. The two key kind of, pedestrian spines are the sort of Riverwalk that moves east to west, about 2,000 feet of Riverwalk along the river. And then sort of that key north to south Port Shore connection that runs through what was the porch, and then utilizing the existing infrastructure at Tower City to sort of make that connection to public spare. And really the idea is really emphasizing that 15-minute city in a walkable environment, really establish sort of, this is kind of an opportunity for people to switch modes, use transit, and to transition from transit to pedestrian, transition from pedestrian to transit or bike or and then sort of building on the earlier comments of trying to deal with the grade and sort of option of accessibility for all. Obviously, allowing access and accommodating all ages and abilities is going to be critical. I'm assuming to sort of, work towards. And, dealing with the 75 to 100 foot grade shades that Laura mentioned is obviously going to be a challenge, but it gives us an opportunity for a wide range of sort of strategic and creative opportunities to make those connections through those public open spaces that I talked about earlier. You can kind of see them on the dash map here, sort of in the middle, utilizing the existing infrastructure in Tower City, and other efforts to sort of create that sort of primary short pole connection, but also looking at leveraging additional spaces and opportunities to create additional connections, both on the eastern edge and western edge of the site, near sort of Huron and Ontario intersection, and also near West Sixth Street. And really, the idea is both leveraging existing infrastructure, whether it's through Tower City, but then also looking at additional infrastructure and being creative with the methods between elevators, ramps, slope walkways, all those different elements to truly try to create an ADA access site north of site. And then continue on the sort of transportation and mobility piece. Obviously, biking is a key component of this, and it's been talked about earlier. Sort of making sure we link our project with existing and future bike and mobility efforts around. The goal here is to not only design our streets to include biking and mobility, but to make sure those streets have direct connections to the existing network and sort of proposed network. Whether it's connections to the towpath trail, along the Riverwalk, along the roadway, but also connections to the Bridges Loop Trail and up Eagle Avenue. And then also the idea of connecting further bike infrastructure further down West Third, and really trying to create an environment that's multimodal, and encourage that different mode share and transition between modes of transit and parking. And then, public transit access, obviously one of the key elements here that we talked about is the Beecher Street, and really sort of leveraging, the existing infrastructure at Tower City to really try to enhance connections to RTA, whether it's through pedestrian movement or bike movement. Obviously, we want to explore as many opportunities to do that, to enhance that connectivity to RTA, whether it's at Tower City or Public Square, and really ensure that, not only the infrastructure for the streetscapes also support transit and transit activity, and connectivity to the transit station. And one of the elements of this is also the idea of adding elevators to Prospect Avenue, so we have a direct transit link down to the Tower City station. And then a couple of quick ones here at the end. Service access. I mentioned earlier the idea is shifting sort of Canal Road south to create a new roadway. This is sort of to allow the existing Canal Road to be sort of a service and access drive that runs behind the new development, sort of below Huron and behind all the buildings to sort of keep service and access to those new buildings and infrastructure hidden and behind the existing roadway to sort of limit the impact of service vehicles on the public realm, on the transportation, on bike impediments, and streetscapes as well. And then public art, this is something that came up through our workshops, and we make sure we include it. Obviously, public art is a critical component of this project. It will be a critical component moving forward. We want to ensure that we will utilize public art, at multiple phases. And really the idea here for when we talk about public art is utilizing it as something that's part of it, and not just an isolated object or something that we utilize to sort of overcome shortcomings.
To build on that, I'm wondering, section a bit beefier in terms of coordination with the existing partners or the city and studio. As the city is kind of transitioning, we're doing really great on murals, but we're also getting to this phase of doing things that are a little bit more spatial, like representation. I think of the new sculpture that's right adjacent to the mall between Public Square and the mall. So wondering again, as you kind of go into kind of the dimensionality of the roadway sections, how we're thinking about how public art is going to be situated there, and talking to those folks and understanding like, hey, what are their parameters in terms of the best places where they look to put things, and then thinking of that kind of again proactively, like, hey, we already know this is going to be a great place to put something like that.
Chair, and it's obviously it's an issue it's near and dear to my heart, so I appreciate you bringing this up. When we're back in a couple of weeks, you'll see, to Michael's point, as we're going through each sequence, definitely more texture in terms of that directive. And for sequence 1A, for it to not be parochial but curated throughout the entire master plan, to also tell what we know now, the charge for our team was to include a public art plan as part of Kev's clinic final, for example, public realm final, so that we're looking at it in terms of big picture, but that we're coming back not just to the committee, but to everybody with what each space individually needs. These are also special and considered.
So I'm gonna quickly wrap up here so we can talk about architecture. Public signage is another key piece. Obviously, when we start to think about critical mass, developing a public signage plan for the districts where this will limited state highlight field. And then also streetscapes. I want to make sure this year so we can get some architecture piece. But really what we're trying to do here is promote street and wide right of way designs that are pedestrian, human scale, and multimodal throughout each of these.
Sorry for putting comment on all the streetscape sections, you have the total right of way width, but there's no call out on like dimensions of sidewalks. So I'm wondering if there are any, and again, flexibility, understand, but the parameters, if we're setting like a high bar for against pedestrian, all that kind of stuff, there is, you know, best practice in terms of those widths. I'm wondering if that's going to be adopted.
I was wondering if Cohen was gonna answer this question. Yes, and I don't wanna shortchange it at all, and I know everyone's eager to get to section 3, but absolutely, we hear you, and it's that balance of maintaining flexibility, but also pushing you know, what we know are best practices, and so again, in the more parochial plans, you will see dimensions, and also, you know, working together, for example, on sequence 1A with West Third Street and Eli new streetscapes as those are dimensioned out. So it's a good point to kind of remember what tells that story or the intent best, and how the dimensions can help out of that story.
Before we go into the architecture, just to comments and tasking. One, when the plan talks about kind of building gaps in the park network, I really want, I think of this river walk as really the end point for what is Rolling Slot Village connector, kind of like towpath piece. But I think that connection point from basically like Broadway and 9 to the top down the hill is sort of a various one. So I know it's a bit outside of the project area, but I want to be kind of intentional about where your guys' infrastructure is pending so we can connect up to that. So there's not just a dangerous gap with trucks all around. The other, and this is more for city staff. I recall years ago there was a conversation about kind of led by Destination Cleveland about enforcing some sort of design unanimity and like area signage that you go around town, like UCI has this thing going on, Ohio City has this thing going on. And I don't want to rob any individual neighborhood or development of its own brand, but I also think that we need to maybe think through like, how is there an overarching theme and are we giving abilities to kind of have more local flair to it. I feel like other cities do a really good job of having unified citywide signage, and ours is sort of decentralized. So I just think it's something that maybe we need to get back on our radar, think through. Again, I don't want to rob the brand, but I also, you know, think there's a way to kind of make it clear that this is still also Cleveland, but it'd still be applicable in Hampshire or certain. So.
I have one thing I know we need to be wrong. It's just a thought. We're talking about all the rooms that you're creating along the walkway, which I think are excellent. And I always think about winter, fall, the other seasons, and your renderings are so delightful and airy and sunny. You know, great passive spaces sort of function year round. So I just hopefully as you guys are trying to be more intentional about getting people down there, just think about the other three seasons.
I want to point out proactively, we will have a winter scene. It's already, it's in our capstone exhibition, and there's even a sledding hill. So thank you for that.
Jack Bialowski, environment principal in Bialowski Regulatory Tests. So to talk about architectural guidelines, private well. This section is comprised of 7 pieces. Content is meant to provide guidance, but not a prescriptive path for the district. The goal is design creativity, not uniformity. So the first section
working down from the larger issue of, programming has to do with creating architecture that helps to, create a mixed-use neighborhood, integrates district programming with broader downtown Cleveland context to encourage physical and social connectivity between people with a variety of different backgrounds and experience. So this is a strategic mix to create enduring and vibrant neighborhoods. Some of the ways that this is done is through use, which is absolutely key along the street levels, and a series of good design principles, including things like having what uses face what uses, isolating non-uses from each other. We need to allow for flexibility in the program of what's happening there, because this is a long-term project and the uses will change over time. Due to market conditions and other reasons as well.
So the second section here, form, this is really, the intent is about utilizing form, massing, and density to balance the multiple scales from the public experience to the overall urban boundary. It notes on needing to set a hierarchy of building heights, from the riverfront, low to the riverfront, higher as it reaches the urban core, and to maintain view corridors and sheds from both the urban core down to the riverfront and vice versa.
So setting has to do with creating an engaged, vibrant streetscape that promotes the pedestrian experience, establishes a distinct sense of place, facilitates the multimodal transportation, supports very public and private parks, open spaces. Obviously, we talked about a series of rooms along this development and throughout it. Yes.
Parking. So we know over the last many years, the whole strategy of parking has really changed with the desire to really reduce the particular area. Although we know that parking is still needed, some developments based on uses. So this brings a kind of a paradox to the table of needing users, residents, tenants to know where to park, but saving the prioritizing the streetscape for active uses. So in this situation, it's really about acknowledging there needs to be a district-wide parking approach. So not looking at isolated parking in certain locations, but looking at it overall, taking multimodal transportation into consideration as well. Noting here that garages, when they are needed, should be screened, wrapped, or built using materials that are complementary to the homes.
Yeah, I'm sure. Maybe this is a question for the city. I get on my EV van, and every time we talk about parking lots, are there any mechanisms in zoning that require at least the infrastructure for charging, the accommodation for all types of scooters, e-bikes, etc.? Because oftentimes I think we miss a lot of opportunities that I see in other cities where they actually take larger car spaces and they chop them up and allow bikes and motorcycles and things. And so we're not seeing a motorcycle take up 2 spaces because they parked, awkwardly. I just hope we begin to think about how we all get to places. It's not just, I don't know how that, if there's a mechanism or if there's something that could be incorporated here to do something less. Those are avenues we have built.
Materials, something that we are all most concerned about relative to this development. The selection needs to provide a diverse and distinct architectural character that remains within range related to adjacent context, including historic landmarks right next to the terminal tower. We have this beautiful Bosar
context near us, and yet we are hoping that the buildings will be forward-looking and modern while respecting that historic context. So materials have different associative and historical significance and reference specific impression, place, and time. So the material palette needs to be designed to be open-ended, to enable it to evolve, to accommodate advancements in technology and manufacturing. This is a long-term project. The time knows whether there'll be biophilic materials or what we're gonna have. And yet, they need to be high quality, they need to be able to be maintained, they need to be durable long run. So these guidelines are intended to provide a general retention materials. They're not prescribing the use of any specific architectural style.
So last two sections, the first is architectural lighting. So the section's intent really is for creating lighting solutions to be encouraged to complement and enhance architectural features in individual buildings as they. And the building and tenant signage, so we heard in part two, about the kind of public wayfinding, environmental graphics components. This one really feels good. The buildings or parcels or blocks. And it's really meant to encourage consistency within those parcels, but avoid uniformity overall, so it doesn't scale there too the overall.
So what we're anticipating is that in same way that the district may have an overall theme for what the signage is, so that you know from that each of the blocks would have a master signage program itself consistent within it, so that tenants would understand what they were able to do, and the amounts and the types. And there would be consistency within each block, but not across.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to address one thing, just real quick. Jack brought up about how we activate the ground floor spaces, like uses. I think that's a very important point. I think the biggest challenge we're gonna have, which falls on leasing and property management, is keeping those spaces occupied, being very creative about the uses that occur there, not rape and pillaging the other uses in other neighborhoods and or downtown. So that's going to be, maybe it's seasonal, maybe it's, I don't know what it is. You guys are a lot smarter than I am. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge.
I'll tack on that, August, to say that I think that we almost need like an urban core storefront study. Because we have so much existing base. I worry sometimes that kind of as a planning practice, we always encourage people to put like first floor retail without really considering whether or not there's a market for that. So if the market needs it, or does it just end up we are asking people to create the very vacant space that we're trying to avoid, and we need to come up with some kind of alternative. So that's, I mean, obviously with this level of development, I think it would be a draw, and there will be justification for new retail, but I don't want to overflow it. And I also, if you're on the downtown, don't want to be over encouraging storefronts to the detriment of the places that are vacant right now.
Councilman, and it's not only retail though. I think that thinking about this in terms of what are blank inactive facades is really what this development has to avoid. There are other types of uses beyond retail that would be active and that kind of activity. It's very levels.
I actually agree with that. I mean, one of the things that we're endeavoring to do in Midtown is create with our first two buildings, but then the next six is create a district where every building is for us on all four sides on the ground floor and has us in there. And to conceptualize retailing what's in the building in a different way, to create a new way of, let's say, retailing the uses, not thinking about retail. And so far it's kind of working. So of course you need some retail, so we will have retail, but I agree, this is the constantly phrasing that this is a crux of what needs to be innovated to make this different. This is not, doesn't exist, it needs to be innovated, it needs to be thought of in a whole new way, it needs to be thought of broadly in terms of what's here and what's not here. And it's not, it's something that will also evolve, but has to be conceptually part of the framework that it's a core value. It's something you have to fight for it. It's not, it doesn't happen naturally. It requires like, you know, like I am, hell or high water, we're gonna do it, right? So, because we don't know how our cities are going to be able to evolve in this next phase in general to create life on the street, and we're gonna have to create it ourselves. So it's a wise concept. Wise.
To the chair, just one reference, study that I think is important, and although we won't, I don't think, be able to have it as part of our appendix, I would just note, and, you know, Drew and Audrey are here to speak with their expertise, but Downtown Cleveland Alliance, or Downtown Cleveland Incorporated, did a retail study last year, that we've gone to presentations on, and I think that there are major lessons, especially post or late stage pandemic, that they gleaned from that, and I would imagine that will continue to evolve. And but I couldn't agree more that it should be a part of our guiding ethos. And in a way, what a wonderful problem it'll be to help to solve that, to not create redundancies or gaps.
One thing that I've been emerging, sort of like figuring this out myself, is to rethink the idea, and it's city planning might totally disagree, but rethink this idea of a front door. Like, so most office buildings, especially if they're office or they're singular use, try to have one front door. And that's what causes this idea of like, you've got this inactive side. So part of what we're trying to do is to have 7 front doors. You know, a different way that's like it feels retail. It's hard to do, but some of that is the kind of old thinking about the idea of like everybody comes in here is one of the biggest problems. So you guys could innovate a bit on that.
It's one of the principles I didn't highlight, but it's part of what this has to do with is that there are no backs to any. They are all for site. That's the nature of the site, and that has impacts on everything, including how do you deal with issues around materials and how do you have impacts.
I'd like to add that during our workshop, architectural guidelines is something we discussed extensively because these buildings not only have the roadway coming in, but they almost all of them exit onto public spaces, whether they're privately or publicly owned. So, you know, that was a big discussion around how do we make sure that they're all interacting with any public ability to do an entry or exit. And then we also had some discussion about how to shield service items, dumpsters, etc., in a way that wouldn't impede on a public realm element. Exiting a park with a.
These are art opportunities too, right?
Yes, they are true, and it's a really unique site in that way. Set of sites.
Go back to the slide. I want to make one suggestion that I don't know if my colleagues will agree with me, but looking at this, it seems like a lot of at least the suggestion in terms of densities, talking about the views looking out to the river. I wonder, thinking about views back looking into the city again, that shore kind of ideology, and thinking that potentially if density was kind of occupied on the edges, one, for consideration to the proximity to the Justice Building that already being significantly higher, but then like crescendoing down to the center. And then, you know, the views look back. Also, if you're on those not so high floors in some of the adjacent buildings further into the core of the city, you can get those views extending. Just a thought. You know, I mean, performers don't have to work, but
It's good though. You know, one of the issues around such a master plan is that, of course, building footprints are going to change. I think it is the overarching principles, the one of trying to keep the higher masses closer to, away from the river, closer to the area of the core where there are higher masses. But I don't think we've talked about it going in the other direction, which is what you're.
Be interesting, I think, again, like almost like a cradle.
Right, one thing that, like, I guess I'm the chair now, but one thing. I'm gonna ask permission, but anyhow, what I think is very successful here, and you've seen this in other cities, is you're creating something very unique and interesting because you're allowing people to penetrate between. And those are always, in my opinion, the most interesting spaces in cities.
Yeah.
Where they're not these big, 4-lane, it's, you can do, there's always opportunity to have respites, to have unique experiences underway. Because your journey is just as important as the destination. I think this sets it up for that.
I think that is the last, that was the end, so happy to entertain any other questions.
We could, while the chair returns to her seat, we do have a staff report as well as, sounds like he wants to entertain for another responsibility. So, yeah.
So we'll take staff report. Yes.
And Chair, members of the commission, Dan Schinkel, fiscal planner, projects and public realm. I appreciate so much of the discussion so far, the team presenting. You know, I'm not the best height man, but I'm very excited. I think it's, you know, to be honest with you, this is 3,000 linear feet of our riverfront deck, this parking lot. And so this is just a wonderful project to come in for our city, for our residents. I think it's really exciting to have a development team interested and excited about bringing this to fruition with us. So I definitely want to commend this team for, you know, not just thinking that, oh, we're going to privatize the space and it's going to be gated on both sides and it'll be open when we feel like it. Like this is a different, it's setting a different tone. That's really important to our city, really important to our residents, and to the everyday people. That is something that I will continue to emphasize as we go through the staff report. And I also wanted to acknowledge our Downtown Flats committee that's here today. They are volunteer on that committee and they're volunteering additional time today, so thank you guys so much for coming in. And I think that shows the level of care that our committee has for our greater community. And something that I think staff really feel strongly about as well. If you want to follow along with me on the staff report, I'm on page 2, I'm going to go over the significant changes between the master plan that you guys, or the conceptual framework that you guys saw back in May, now in 2023, to the MVP that we're now doing today. One of the major changes that Nora has spoken to in the rest of her team was this idea of the Huron Club. And this is a significant change in that the master plan is no longer pursuing the cut of that roadway. That was a severing of Huron at West 2nd and West 3rd. And, you know, in some of the coordination, I think, Commissioner Fluker that you brought up, a lot of that discussion there was in coordination with the city, with our staff. Process of our staff, something we're very excited about, also we can get to occur. And these are things that major moves that we're able to do together between a development team and the city to bring things that are vibrant, exciting, and honestly safe and green to our city that we haven't had in the past. That's a very exciting shift. And we do see Huron in particular getting a road diet, so that's something to consider as we go forward. One of the other significant changes is Canal Road and the new roadway. So Canal is being proposed to be severed at the bend near Ontario Street, and that will accommodate construction of a new service road into, sort of the underside of these parcels. As we talked about, having 4 sides on all buildings or 4 sides, multiple front doors. Service, we really are pushing to happen in the underside. And Tower City's already pretty well set up for that capacity. So that's exciting in that sense, but that is a severing of the roadway that is still being discussed within the city. And so I think I'll cover the process and what's next at the very end as a closing, but I did want to point out that the comment tracker that was discussed, this is a really helpful tool for us because we have multiple iterations of these documents. We have a lot of staff that are looking at these things. We provided verbal comments today. We do have to kind of work through a process to, respond and resolve those comments. So kudos to the team for putting that together for us to track all these comments. The reason I bring that up is because I've been tracking all your comments so far today. If you have additional commentary you'd like, throughout the day and into the next couple of weeks, we invite that. And it's something that, I will track, our team will track and work with the Bedrock team on. So we really want you guys to be thinking about your big picture aspirational goals. What do you really want to see that this thing does, it accomplishes in the vision? Those things that maybe we haven't touched on yet. And then if there's any critical details that are unexplored or underexplored so far that you really want to see before this plan comes back. Because this plan will come back in the fall for final adoption. And so we want to capture as much of that direction now as we can. If we need additional information, we can supply it over time. But we want to capture that so that when it does come back for final, there's, oh, when you think about this, and we've got to kind of, work through a process to bring this commentary. So walking through now the additional commentary section. Going to the beginning of the document, our executive summary or introduction, equity was a discussion point identified as a principal element of the plan. And that's something that the city really wants to see, further developed. It's an exciting element. It's something that the city in and of itself is committed to, our community is committed to, and wants to see the city on. I think it's important for, we've submitted a number of comments around equity to the teams, and we hope that those are advanced further and continue to be centered as this document moves forward. This team has also discussed a lot about the intensive grade change that is there. I think a number of commission members, Sergeant in particular, was really honing in on this grade change. It's something I know the project team knows how much I think about on a daily basis, but it does map multiple pedestrian routes at this point through the site, but accessible pedestrian connections from Public Square down to the river without relying on building access is not yet determined in the plan. So that's something that we really want the commission to think about today. And as you continue your deliberations, to kind of push us in whatever directions you think is appropriate there. Some of those grade changes are still hard to identify. A site survey would be really helpful for us to better understand that. Some elevations, contour lines, things of that nature. Will really push us to really understand that problem and start to be more creative with some of the solutions. Another element, obviously, we're looking at public space, public realm. Ownership, just so everyone understands, ownership and future maintenance, management, and programming responsibilities are already actually outlined in the master development agreement, but they're also being further developed in the financing agreement. So those things are still very much in flux. There has been discussion so far with Gas Clinic about that section of Riverfront being their ownership and maintained by them going forward, but I think these things are still very much in process. So there was questions about those things. I know maintenance for city facilities is difficult and something that we're always thinking proactively on. I think the city and Bedrock both see that we need to continue stakeholder outreach and public engagement on this plan. This is the first time that the MVP has been seen by the public, so it's an exciting moment. In these moments, you certainly hear some chatter in the world, and that's really exciting because I think people are excited as they should be about a plan like this. I think what we've heard is stakeholders interested in more direct engagement, and that's something that the city is certainly committed to. I know that our team is. Moving into some of the roadways on the last page of the staff report. Bedrock in the city will continue to analyze traffic impacts of the Allen New roadway. I mentioned the one-way Barron's Memorial Bridge Loop. Also, some of these connections to Canal Basin, like that's some of that coordination that the city's doing. To Flinker's point, I think we can always advance on that coordination more and bring more people in. I think part of that could be accomplished as we continue our stakeholder engagement and, as we get, lower in elevation from the high level plan down to the site specific, getting our site development team involved, I think is going to be a major help with those. And then CDSR was discussed today. We're excited that that is now part of the plan, that the location is identified. That planning study is still going on. Nora mentioned Matt Moss. I couldn't give him more kudos on pushing that process from the city side and working with all stakeholders there to really engage around what that could look like. That's another type of multimodal system that we just haven't secured downtown. And having that connection is going to be very exciting, both to come downtown, but also to go out to the national park system. The place I was at last night, which is just fantastic this time of year, obviously, but also all year round. So that connection right in the heart of our downtown at Teller City, which is the hub of our community, that creates an access to a place that for many is inaccessible. So it's a very exciting thing to see now in the plan in particular. Getting into the rest of the roadway network, obviously we're working on our one-way pair system. There's a number of other roadways that fall within this plan. The design intent of that network is still a little bit limited in information at this time. And there's some more details that we're looking for, and I know we'll continue to engage around in our upcoming workshops. Roadway width changes, mobility features, intersections, where bus and bike lanes fall. All of those things we're really interested in seeing how they operate on the street. We heard a number of folks talk about between Slythe and Sargent really highlighting RTA in particular, and how those connections happen here. RTA is a member of the team that meets with us on a regular basis. We're really getting into the nitty gritty and the additional elevators, things like that have been discussed. I know it's come up with downtown class as well. These are things that we really need to feed into and understand as a principle of the plan, because I think those are integral to how this system works well and becomes a destination that's lively, exciting, safe. I think all these roads need a little bit of a diet and a little more activation. And I think just given from the recent work that Bedrock has done, that they're committed to some activations along that area. And then finally, the MVP indicates a desire to adhere to the principles of the climate action plan from the city of Cleveland and Leading Green Streets ordinance. We really want to dig into that more. I think we saw some of the early stages of sustainability so far and what green infrastructure can be. We really want to kind of jump deeper into that. We're in a very particular place in time where climate is a much bigger, broader issue than it's really ever been. So knowing that this is a 20-year plan, that we're starting some implementation even right now, that we get some of these elements in there, not just in the sites under, soon to be under construction, but it's a principle going forward. We know that we're going to commit to these things, these strategies, because honestly our future depends on it. But that, we will have to continue to advance those things. I think we're still at sort of these minimum requirements. We still have rules and regulations from, the 1950s on our books. Like, those aren't really what's gonna help us in the future. We have to really be thinking proactively about sustainability, green infrastructure, and all those other elements. So those are things that, and all of that, then, all the green infrastructure, all these pieces that are good for our climate, good for our health, end up being really good for safe streets, vibrant streets, shady places, places you love to enjoy and just like have a helpful experience downtown. And so those things we want to really see and continue working with this team on things. So those are things we'd like the community to look into further as deliberations go on. Thank you guys so much for sitting with us so long on this one. I appreciate the team putting forth so much effort to actually activate 3,000 linear feet of our road. It's an incredible project to see better.
Thank you. All right, let's take a public comment. I don't want to take enough time. We have about 45 minutes total for both the commission also. So how we're going to do this is I'm going to open it up for public comment. Anybody who'd like to speak, we'll start here who's in person, and then we'll go to online. Just raise your hand. I need you to state your name and address, and sign in, and I will keep it to 3 minutes or less. And it can also be a question. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Drew Crawford from Downtown Cleveland Incorporated, representing Downtown Cleveland, but also a City of Cleveland resident. So thank you so much for the presentation and having us here. Really, really exciting stuff. The millions, getting close to $1 billion of investment. So just kind of two small questions and comments. One, in terms of the path along the riverfront, I think it was the southeast side. It looks like the pedestrian connection is really narrow. And I know that this is something that may not necessarily be fleshed out at this point, but it's closer to where the Cavs practice facility is and the Cleveland Clinic facility. It looks just extremely narrow. So I just want to make sure that there's not pedestrian conflict there. So that's one. And then the second one, and my kind of pet peeve is when a master plan, this is nothing that this master plan can control or the city can control, but I'm going to say it anyway. When looking southward, you're going to be looking at boat storage on the other side of the river. And I know that there's other great things to look at, but directly across from these parcels is boat storage. And I know that that's really not the purview of anyone in this room, but I guess I would just encourage, again, close to $1 billion of investment over the next couple of decades. And the view for a lot of these towers is some great things, especially if you're up high. But if there's just a way to think in some creative way about what is being looked at on the other side, I think that'd be really important. So thanks.
Please go ahead.
Thanks so much. And Drew, just for my edification, do you mean the Riverwalk on the south?
Yes, exactly.
This is it's a great question in terms of dimensions. So we have 20 feet on the Riverwalk at that point. And so there is, and then there's the egress from the Cavs Clinic building, and then there's an element of kind of a landscaped edge and seating elements and a certain form of opacity that we've talked a lot with the city staff about between the building and that experience on the Riverwalk. But right now, at that particular point that you were looking at, it is 20 feet to the railing, and then yeah, so it is significant, and while we talked a little bit in task force this week with the city staff about what 20-foot clear means rather than 20-feet program.
Yeah,
I think you'll find that it's a good use of pedestrian access space.
Thank you.
Anybody else here?
Krista Pasek, Downtown West Center. I heard it in the staff's comments, but I also think it bears repeating from our board as well. But I think it's really important that all of the public spaces are really looked at from that equitable lens and making sure that they're accessible, and just really encouraging that aspect of the public realm. I applaud the team. I see that you're providing a lot of public access up and down and in those interstitial spaces. I think it's going to be really important to the project's success. I see sometimes there's great little pocket parks in town, but if they're gated off and they're private and nobody can access them, it's to a detriment. So I applaud you on that. And I just want to encourage you to continue thinking about making sure that, people in wheelchairs, moms with strollers, like all of them can
get up and down and navigate the space. And along those lines, also looking at potentially in those street sections, I didn't see it today. Maybe that's forthcoming, maybe there's more details on that, but maybe recommending some minimum widths for some of these things, what we're striving for amenity strips or sidewalks, and just making sure that that is accounted for. I know some of the roadways are existing infrastructure, so we're dealing with those conditions, but where we have the opportunity to encourage that extra expanse would be really key to that activation. Relating to the architecture portion of it, I would say that I understand and appreciate the non-prescriptive nature of the materials and the styles and things like that. But I think maybe there's something key to a little bit more emphasis and detail on like the form and the massing, just to provide a little bit more guideline or instruction. I don't want, I want to make sure that we're keeping our frontages, kind of holding to that public realm a little bit and keeping them active, as we kind of discussed earlier. Maybe considering some minimums on some heights. I'm not really concerned about maximums, but I don't want to. The massing here is amazing. There is a minimum, okay? Because I don't want to see like a handful of like 2-story buildings or something down here. I think there's real opportunity for some density. So just making sure that we're encouraging that.
I believe the minimum was 36 feet.
I mean, I'd love to make sure that things are definitely higher. This is downtown. This is the central business district. So just might do something. Thank you.
I didn't think of this till Drew asked this question, but I'm gonna throw some planning. Tanya Blonsky on the Time Group Committee actually said I'm recused today too, but I decided to come. But in the planning,
You're a citizen.
yeah, hold on, this is, well, good. In the planning for the Topaz Trail, the site acquisition, what was done and what wasn't done, the whole stretch Drew mentioned, that whole ownership belongs to the west. Across the view from this whole plan, those people are in a lot of lack of compliance with maintenance, property. That's a whole other issue, but what's nearby to them that they don't control. I just think that I don't know what the legal rights are, people have property rights, but there clearly are buildings that aren't maintained, there's sidewalks, it's just that there's a level of maintenance right across it. It can make that environment they're looking at so much better. So I think adjacent to this such a dramatic plan, there needs to be some thought about city inspection, all the things that relate to, you kind of have a dormant allowed to kind of get away with. I can just say that from doing the Topaz Trail. A quick story. We were done with the Topaz Trail and then we got a call from all those partners. Hey, we see what's going on. What are you guys doing over there? We were done. There was like no innate curiosity in that land ownership. And they were almost impossible to find and fill it. So that's right adjacent, right across the river. I just think there might be a public policy strategy by Jason.
Yes, in the room.
Hi, Audrey Gerlach, also with John Humphrey, and I just want to say we are fully behind Bedrock's project and so excited to see this master plan really start to come to life. On the conversation around connectivity to the core, we've been working with OHM, Dan, Callie, Director Hong, and several other city staff members on a public square connectivity and mobility plan that hasn't been brought before commission or anything. We're still in process, but I think there's great opportunity for synergy there to think through like, the connectivity between those public spaces as well as sort of the offshoot streets coming out of the square and in towards the river. And then the last comment also on the retail, happy to share a copy of the findings from our retail study last year with the downtown core. I think it's totally relevant to the work we're doing here. And I just want to echo the comments that we are overbuilt even in the core. We have more retail space than we have demand to fill as is. I would not use that as any sort of discouragement from creating active storefronts on the riverfront. I think we just need to get creative and think about kind of the holistic strategy. Thank you.
Anybody else sitting?
Greg Soltis, downtown design review, 21111 Spring Boulevard is Argue Architects for Work. I just want to say thank you because like a lot of the things that we've talked about in design review, I see reflected in the changes. And it makes it feel really good for a process like this, to feel the community having input in it. And then the other thing, and I'm sure this will be addressed moving forward, is now that we've kind of got the groundwork laid out, you know, the bones, if you will, and they seem to be really good. I feel very positive about the direction of the details on the street level, the female detail. The other thing is just architecture, and as Jack already mentioned today, you know, referencing our past but still doing something contemporary. And so my big concern is I think like if you look at the graphic up there, you know, there's a gradation that you could think of the river level and the industrial history and influence and that architectural expression in our city. And then as you go up the hill to a more like that money that industry produced all these beautiful buildings with neoclassical overtones, Beaux-Arts and other styles. And so making sure that we understand as we move forward, like when those different styles are appropriate, because I see sometimes in our city where we think, oh, we're an industrial city and we'll use these industrial sort of design aesthetics in places that are much more stately and maybe it seems like an inappropriate mix. So that would be my big concern moving forward. And also just remembering like, well, what's the essence of a city, a big city, you know, like we historically always have thought of ourselves as like a great mighty city and like what are the basics that make a city great, like density, activity, you know, a grandness to the way things are oriented and placed, which I think when you look at a lot of newer cities in the world that have beautiful natural landscapes, people go there and say, oh, this is really beautiful. But if you were to take the mountains in the background away or the beach away, there's the city itself, the stuff that the people built, you know, imply that grandness. And oftentimes it doesn't. So yeah, that's my comments, but thank you.
Thanks, Sharon.
Chairman, downtown design plans. Well, I don't want to reiterate comments by Tom Bain. I think as a team and the review committee, we've always come up with some really great comments and they've done so best. I think the process is working. I think that's the best thing I can say about this. The iterative process seems to be working from the initial stuff that I saw till now. I see great progress. I'm glad to see what I'm seeing. I think you've got a great guy here in Jack Bialowski for the architectural guidelines. We have a lot of faith in him and our committee on coming up with appropriate comments architecturally, and it seems to be working. He's putting some good guidelines for this process.
Anybody else in the room before I go online? Okay, anybody who is on the Zoom can raise their hands. I don't see anyone. Got a hand raised.
Madam Chair, we received one. Yeah, should I read the list?
Is it long?
I'll just. Yeah, I'll get the highlights. It's from Mr. July, actually came in June. And his comment is about extending the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Road to our city center. And that could parallel rerouted Canal Road.
And they have a copy of it? You have a copy?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
I forgot, I was thinking about that too. I think it would be great if you could get on the train at Tower City. So I could hear. Oh, I was gonna say, I think, that was one of the things I wanted to say too. I think it'd be great if you could get on the train at Tower City, instead of having to be in the valley, because not only does it allow city residents to get to the park, but it allows people that live outside the city to be dropped off directly into the city in human scaled accessible places that take advantage of the city, which I think would be really great. And also, last thing, sorry, was we've started this conversation about art, public art being more integrated into the architecture and even thinking architecture as art itself and not just gluing art onto buildings, but things being thought, you know, as integrated together. And I think that's an important thing to take away from this conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we're going to close the public portion because I do want time for commission members to ask any more questions or give any other feedback.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to follow up on Greg's point about public art. Oftentimes, what we do, and we just can't help it because it's human condition, we design the environment, then we ask the artists to come to the table. We need to change that. Really need to have that dialogue now, so that might inform some things. So it's not an afterthought, even though it's not gonna be applied, it's gonna help create the space, the wonderment that we're talking.
Madam Chair, I would challenge the design team and the project team to look at how the document uses potential as well as electric fix to allow flexibility. I get it, like you want to be flexible, and I think again the idea of creativity and not uniformity, but if you want to make it feel like a place, there is some level of uniformity that helps build a place, right? So I think be very selective of how you're using those words instead of like, it seems like again, conceptual, like.
Meaning
like-
it's overused.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. I appreciate that.
I'm gonna try my best to summarize, because I have a lot of comments and thoughts. One, just thank you. Most folks know I'm a transplant, but I've been in Cleveland for some time. But I still get a lot of like, oh, you live in Cleveland? From my New York home friends and family. And so only those that have come here can understand not just what the potential is, but what the value is today. And I do take great pride in saying I have two homes. I have my home, New York, but Cleveland for sure is my home. So I completely see and understand the magnitude of what this can be. I think as I was trying to process both the written and the presentation and commentary today, one area of concern is just accessibility for our residents at large. There's a lot of terminology, a lot of jargon that can feel intimidating for folks that are not in this day-to-day work. And so I just think, as we move through this journey, thinking of ways that, things like digital storytelling could be infused and bring updates to the community at large. It's great that we have our design review folks that are here representing residents from downtown, but this will be space for our city and the region at large. And we want to make sure that there is accessibility from our region across the board and understanding what's happening. Often we struggle with this tension of things being done for us versus with us. And so how do we break that mold and make sure that we're not just thinking about the end game and the end destination, but that along the way, folks are being carried along and they really feel a part of it, just like the comments that were just made about the artists and ways in which their intellectual thought is brought in, not just their craftsmanship is brought in as well. Some of the other thoughts and reflections is around, I guess, the participatory element of how things are being decided. And again, recognizing and respecting the design review, our role, obviously the role of multiple teams, and just wanting to make sure that overtone of resident engagement and participatory engagement at different stages is being thought through, even through how spaces are being curated and who's responsible for creating the programming when we get to that place in time, I think is important. Dan, in your update, you talked just briefly about like the ownership and the future maintenance. One thought here too is something else to be explored that I would appreciate for different community ownership models. When we think about this catalytic change for generations to come, what are we doing to think about generational wealth and the shift in wealth for the residents of the city? People far more well versed than I in economic models could better understand that, but I think this is an opportunity to at least think about that. And then again, I don't know where and when a broader resident advisory council could be thought of to again just continue to not only hold us accountable as a community, but just continue to bring those different insights and reflections. Sometimes you just need the layperson to be like, make it make sense, like just say it in plain speak. So that it's not just, again, this glossy thing that is being done for me, but that I feel like I'm really integrated into the fabric of what is going to be a multi-generational change. Thank you all for everybody's contributions.
Yeah, I think I mentioned my comments along the way. I do think and just in regard to the railroad being in Tower City, it's my preference as well, but I've kind of come to the conclusion that it's not really practical if it were not in front of Tower City. Obviously, like the plan here is to build, but to able to bring a train up into the existing station, like a half mile in track, getting slope up, it's just not a mistake for it. So the option would be either close location or like in the center of the entire development. Just because of the 50-foot grade change between Canal Road and on top where the trains are. So I've kind of made my peace with that, but I do think it is a critical element of the overall project and making sure that it's not off the corner, but that it's tied to the rest of
You go first.
So in Dan's discussion, in talking about sustainability and climate change, the idea of radically centering sustainability came to my mind. And when you're building all these new buildings, what are the opportunities for centering carbon neutrality, looking at the materiality, building electrification, looking forward as building codes change, electrification becomes key. And the opportunities for creating, electric microgrids, thinking about serving space. I think it's really, really important. And then, and also thinking about equity, and Councilman Slave's comment about Slavic Village, and connecting to that, I think something I saw mentioned, but I think would be further explored is more divergent connectivity, not just downtown connectivity, but across the river. How do we show this more in Cleveland as a whole, not just kind of in the legislative space. So, but wonderful plan, really exciting. Thank you for the work.
Madam Chair, I did want to say one comment. When the project is completed, I would really like to see an educational component where you have some interactive screens where people could touch and see how the project came about, purpose of the project. They have one down in Cincinnati, it's the Carnegie Hall of Fame, and you can walk and you can touch the screens, and you can see how it came about and the purpose of the project. And I think it's really beneficial for those that involved in the development. It's a community opportunity to see that.
Two comments, one involves Lynn Henderson. Just so you know, so I'm so happy you're involved. So I just kind of agree with I think I'm getting old, so that but the more that I see how amazing the Gateway vision and master plan is and how it's stand the test of time and how it has such an expansive quality to it that is one of the reasons, not the only reason that we're here. But what it raised for me is, especially since you gave them a whole PhD on Gateway, is that it's not even rendered here as a major anchor like Tower City is, that is supposed to be leveraged. So I have a problem with that, but more so that it makes me wonder, because I believe that the master plan really saw it as being one of the catalysts for this, right? Which is why I think I said this last time. It's like the full realization of what the aspirations of that was. So to that point, I think within the master plan of this, you have what most districts would die to have, which is two drivers of that scale. And it's not only not rendered here, it's not really articulated what that would mean. So I would think about that because I think there's more there. And I know there's grade and there's a whole lot of other issues, but I think they can be sort of leveraged. So that's first. Second is, and to that point, which is, there's going to be a question in here about Tower City. The earliest thing we saw was some radical rethinking of Tower City, what the we're gonna do with it. And so I think I have a question about, is there room to evolve that as you learn and know more? Because like what I'm gonna say isn't possible, but I'm just gonna say that it's not possible to do what I'm saying, but like one really radical idea is just renew it. Not the whole thing, I mean, and have public green space that connects back to downtown, like, but even in the plan where it was going to be this new civic space that would kind of pass me down, like, it's still not to me clear that that's achievable. So it's just so important. It's as important a driver to me as gateway to this. And it also isn't articulated for me both how and what's possible. So this still, from a citywide perspective, isn't showing the leverage that I know that you're thinking about. I'm not saying you aren't, I'm just not interested. And then last is the, I think, super brilliant comment by my two colleagues about future of ground floor. I just want to say it again. I don't know that we have the answer, but I think that crux of the big work for me has to be done in really thinking about, and also putting a stake in the ground that you're going to create the most porous ground floor possible to activate business. I'm not using retail. I'm just saying that conceptually to set some big goals for this district to innovate around the porousness of the ground floor, the rethinking about sort of the concentrations of where people come in and out. Some of that's actually just architecture, actually, right? But some of it's programmatic. It's why large institutional districts are so terrible to be in, right? So, and that's not what you have here. So for me, these are the two big things now that I think could go a little bit further and that will make this probably unlike any other place in the world, which it already will be, but.
I'm sure I have two things. Piggybacking back on Greg's point. There is a person here at City Hall, her name is Rhonda Brown. I would utilize her when we start talking about art and artists. She's wonderful. The second thing is, by the way, I'm old. I don't know about Lillian, but I'm over 60. So here's the deal. But that's not going to be my point. I think this is all great. And it's going back to Erica's point. This is great that you see Jack and everyone. I haven't seen a lot of young folks. I haven't seen a lot of young folks stand up here and have agency to talk about what we're doing. It's not a criticism, it's just a fact, but I think having folks of all backgrounds, ethnicities, ages will create better outcomes and greater outcomes. So it would be nice to hear perspective because quite frankly, this ain't about me. I mean, if this is done before I'm dead, then I'll be surprised. So, and I live a clean, fairly clean. But my point is, let's not forget that. That's all. Thanks.
So I know we're not gonna make a motion, of what we, and I'm actually not going to try to summarize. What I think we're gonna do, it's informational, but what I think we're gonna do is, because there is some request to provide some feedback that from the commission itself, they give some direction. I think it's pretty clear, so I think we're gonna rely on staff to probably summarize the comments, if you will, okay? And before I kind of close it out, there's another big thank you, but I'm gonna throw it back to you guys. You have what you need, heard, is there anything else you want to hear from us or ask of us? Because we're here to help advance along the way. So if we didn't touch on something you want to know that helps you move quickly or advance, ask of us.
No, I would say Jeff Hongonis, principal with MKSK. You're gonna hate this. I sort of want to throw that back to you because you've heard from Nora and Deb and Dan, and we really have made extremely concerted efforts to be collaborative, coordinated, and work back and forth quite a bit. I think what we want to know from you all is, are there red flags in here, things that are missing? Because I would say pragmatically, aspirationally, we feel like we're, on our end and on behalf of the city, checking those boxes. But, Lillian, your comments about making sure that we recognize Terminal Tower and Gateway as an anchor important. The comments about the activated ground floor, let's do a panel on that someday. I'm like, I can't help but keep my mouth shut, trying to keep my mouth shut about that, because I totally agree. I think this idea of grade change is sort of, I'll be dramatic for effect here, the existential physical landscape infrastructure challenge of the project, like rough justice. If we were gonna build a ramp from here on down to the river, it's over 1,500 feet long. So if you sort of, operationalize that on every one of these little pocket parks, we have huge challenges ahead of us. So I think what we want to know from you all as a board at the highest level is there anything big missing? Because I think pragmatically, you have a huge, incredible, talented team working on behalf of Nora and Bedrock. So I think, we have lots of comments to work with, and appreciate all the feedback that you all can provide. And great comments as well, Andrew, about connectivity, and thank you for the amphitheater comment, you read my mind. Not on this project, but globally.
It's just a small thing too, which we've been trying to work on. I think next time for us, come without the text. Give us a PowerPoint.
I know, this was a
I know, it's
awful
it's not a problem with you. We've started to see it with every master plan we see, is that the presentation is the document that we get in advance, it's a PDF. And it really, there are parts of this that I could not see, and I couldn't even see in the document itself because they can't. So, small thing, it's not just you, everybody does it, but 10 slides with just the images would have been fun. No, I know. See the document, but you sent it to us in advance, but I mean, here, this, for the public viewing also, you can't make sense of what streets you're talking about, even though we understood well, but that's for next.
If it's on a public record, we maybe a copy of it. That means that we're.
Remember the sky thing?
Of course. Sky dog? Yeah.
There's beer.
So thank you very much. Do we have a director's report or we're adjourned?
Oh, me too. So this agenda item is wrapped.
Yeah, we're just.
Okay.
That was you guys to go.
Thank you. Sorry. We have some next steps.
That's actually gonna fit before that.
Okay, doing fast.
So, I mean, to these points about, comments coming in, like I said, please send comments, either directly to Joyce or myself. We'll take those. I've already got 7 pages of comments from what I heard today, so I hope the team has been taking notes. I'll send these along as well, but, if, I know some of these things have to digest a while, but take some time, think about it, send us some comments. We have till the fall that this comes back. Obviously, we want to give them time to really think about some of these, because these are bigger pieces. So the city is working with Bedrock on planning some upcoming workshops to continue working through a number of these next steps in the document. So I wanted to hone in on that, and then upcoming submissions that you will see. CABS, Cleveland Clinical Component Center, will be coming back for final architectural and schematic public realm and site later this summer. And then the final site and public realm approval for that will follow soon thereafter. And then, like I said, it'll be due with that sometime this fall. So,
We'll see a lot of you. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Nora, as an aside, if you want to bring it to the well.
What's your comment?
Why should we?
Leading here.
Go back, turn around. Okay. Over to right.
Okay.
All right, you need to-
I sent you guys an email. You don't have to-
I'll hold it, yeah. See it. Great.
So, how was your?
I'll be right back. Very good. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Thank you.
You know, like, okay, dude, we're just sitting there like,
It's like, you know, what it costs, we can do that. Or two. That's like. Maybe what we do. She just wants to. Yeah, so we don't have to take that, right, that's in the line. So then, if there's this additional.
See it.
On top of those
City
things,
website.
they're still- And I go over and answer, like, go back, I don't want your son. Well. Yeah, you're right.
I think it's, like, if you look with
So. Well, I had some like.
one of the things that are actually very, that we're not gonna have.
Andrew got thrown.
My worry is that again, when it's actually happening,
So we're not doing
there's too
anything.
much flexibility regarding that. I mean, one of the big things that I hope they actually, again, get a, how do you maintain those public connections, those pseudo, they're gonna be private public spaces. What are the rules that are actually always like, anyone can always. Whether it's adjacent to the building, or alley space,
In addition.
to the building, or private, like, one of those things that kind of. Developers can actually. Right here.
Gentlemen.
Short transition.
Like.
Oh, so
Then,
you know, they should-
she's like, well, what about?
Because like the density to the west.
Translate
Yeah.
everything.
But I would also, I think like the density.
Like, they're already.
You know.
No, I get that.
Exactly, so it's just like naturally, to me, it makes sense to crescendo and then like just create this great view, this, and also like you don't have to go that low. Adjacent buildings, pretty high, like, so you can still get like.
We wanna like make sure there's.
Yeah.
Clear.
There's better build.
yeah, I think,
Yeah, I also think for me.
we're doing it, and
pedestrian
anything
zones,
that we're
like, you know,
doing, amplify it.
when you're up, when you're next.
If we're gonna do 10 heads, and we're gonna do 20,
It feels weird, right? So like, you know, like. putting
We took
the
work
logo
with that.
and-
Yeah, we did go.
Yes. I feel like it's a sense to keep it low and at the center, so when you enter.
I mean, I think it's a question.
This land entrance in the middle,
You're gonna
out, so you're just like,
some
oh wow,
precinct
that's very,
And
You know,
this is
targeted.
back to the city, like, you know, I think it's like.
That-
areas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Say, great for your report, yeah, no, I mean, I think.
These five, you know, got $10,000 more, they
Thank you all.
our doors.
You guys, we gotta wrap up.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say thank you because, you know, it's a lot, it's really important to the city, it's important to me, it's really important to the team. So just really appreciate all of your.
Thank you for that packing the agenda.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
It's like,
you wouldn't
it
get my
was
list.
so.
Yeah, but, not to.
time that was required.
Yes.
Really, but they
Appreciate it. My one ask moving forward is to continue looking at the document, to look at specifically there's objectives listed in each of your pages. And I would really love if you could take your respective sections, or even the whole document if you have time, to really look at those objectives and send those comments to the staff within the next 2 weeks. I think that would be essential as we go through the workshops, just to wrap that last. Thank you so much. Quickly, director support here. We're continuing to hire, so we again have, we're trying to streamline our operations. We're looking for a development review coordinator. That job ends today, so really looking for that person to help assist with zoning and design review, making sure things are moving forward and first point person in charge. We are looking for an assistant zoning administrator right below Shannon Leonard, to look at assisting with writing those letters of performance or non-conformance. It's really about sort of design, development review as well. We're also going to be posting a senior assistant city planner in the zoning section next week. So again, looking for that right person to help assist our zoning sections because there's so many great zoning changes. Being form-based code or people working on these strategic initiatives. Upcoming events, we do have a neighborhood bike ride coming up. So you're all invited to come and get some tweets. Wanted to mention the links up here, apologies, but form-based code had its birthday on July 3rd. So it's born into existence and it's official now. Thank you. July 3rd.
Could have been born.
I know. I know. It was born early.
July 3rd, 2024. That should be on your resume.
Yeah, we're gonna have a birthday celebration every year. It's already on our calendars for the staff. But there's been a lot of media interest in performance code, and there was an article published by Signal about how does the landmark not planning commission, but landmarks commissioners and staff were quoted in that article about what it does and how the process works. Last slide, I think. Just work plan wise, I wanted to update you all on some of the key projects that we're working on. As you remember, last fall, thanks to council, we appropriated money for non-professional services. We are starting to execute on some of these tasks. And these again are sort of smaller projects, but things that we want to implement and execute on. So one of the key projects coming up that we're excited about is to explore the feasibility of protected bike lanes on the upcoming King Avenue capital project. So that would be from East 13th Street all the way to East 55th. This would be, if it is feasible, it would be the first parking protected bike lane in the big one. So we're pumped about that. That work is just beginning. And we have also kicked off the Boulder Road streetscape design concept. So the idea is we have a ton of investment now going into Boulder Road and wanting to make sure that the design there is consistent with the character that we want to see, historic buildings, but also road diet, as well as more presence with parklets, dining. So those anticipated will take between 2 and 4 months, I believe, to execute, and we will have more projects moving forward soon. That's it from the director's report. Adjourn for lunch. And then we do have a working meeting.
Is there a working meeting?
It is, we're going to adjourn now. We have to adjourn now. It's a lunch.